from Islamic University of Medina. So may Allah give him tawfiq to complete his studies, and we hope to benefit today from his knowledge, inshallah. And we have the handouts for you. And also remember that there is a workshop after Salat al-Dhuhr, inshallah. Barakallahu feek.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنته واهتدى بهديه إلى يوم الدين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما، وأرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we ask Him to send His praise and peace and blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his family, his companions, and his followers until the day of judgment. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us beneficial knowledge and to make us benefit from our knowledge, and to show us the truth as truth, and to allow us to follow it, and to show us falsehood as falsehood, and to allow us to avoid it. Inshallah, today we will be covering the topic, an important, very important topic, the rules related to tahara, or purification. As we all know, Islam is built upon 5 pillars: the testimony of faith, shahadat la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and establishing the prayer, and giving the zakah, and fasting Ramadan, and performing Hajj. And the only pillar that is always obligatory upon all Muslims is the prayer, as long as a person is sane. As for fasting, a person has to be he has to be healthy enough to fast. And some people who are not healthy and do not have the ability, fasting becomes non-obligatory upon them, such as old people, as well as people with terminal illnesses that are unable to fast, and fasting harms them. As for Hajj, many people cannot afford Hajj. They don't have the financial means to get to Mecca and make Hajj. So Hajj does not become obligatory upon them until they have the financial means. Likewise, zakah is not due upon many people who are too poor to own the minimum threshold of zakah. So the prayer is the only thing that is always obligatory upon a Muslim as long as he is sane. And the Prophet ﷺ informed us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not accept a person's prayer if he is in a state of hadath or impurity until he performs wudu. And we'll inshallah have an introduction regarding fiqh and why we study fiqh and how to study fiqh, and then we'll talk about the chapters of tahara. Before we begin, we will discuss the quiz. If there are any questions regarding the quiz from the brothers and sisters, we'll take one question from the brothers and one question from the sisters. Please state the actual question and not just the number. Any questions on the quiz? Yes, brother.
I don't remember the exact question, but it was something to do with the obligation required for wudu, or is washing your mouth and nose recommended or obligatory for wudu, and it said that both obligatory for wudu and ghusl,
Yeah.
but the reading said otherwise.
Okay, let's see. The rinsing of the mouth and nose, is it obligatory in wudu and ghusl, or recommended in wudu and ghusl, or obligatory in wudu only, recommended in ghusl, or obligatory in ghusl only, recommended in wudu? Who can answer that question? Yes, Ismail. It's obligatory in both, but some brothers are saying it's not in the text, right? This actually requires some thinking. Let's open the book of wudu. Okay, in the obligations of wudu, he mentions washing the limbs one time except for the hands in the very beginning. Then in the preferred actions, he says thoroughness in rinsing the mouth and nose, unless one is fasting. Yeah, this is a bit tricky because thoroughness in rinsing the mouth and nose means to take extra water for rinsing the mouth and nose. And this is recommended to take extra water for rinsing the mouth and nose, except if a person's fasting so that he does not break his fast and take extra water that will make him swallow it. So this is disliked for a fasting person to take extra water. However, the actual rinsing of the mouth and nose is part of the face. It is obligatory. Even though it's not explicitly stated, it is understood. And I expected many people to be confused about this, which is not a problem. Because some authors mention it explicitly. They say from the obligations of wudu is washing the face, including rinsing of the mouth and nose. And let's go to the book of ghusl, bathing. Here he says the intention, its obligations are the intention, and number two is washing the entire body with water, including rinsing the mouth and nostrils. Okay? This shows you here that rinsing the mouth and nose is part of washing the face, as part of the apparent part of the body. Because those who say it is not part of the face, the nose and the mouth, they take the ruling of the inner cavity and not the apparent face. They say it's not obligatory. And the Hanabila and Imam Ahmad says that it's part of the face and it takes the same ruling. Yes, I agree, it is not explicitly mentioned in the text, and that's why it is definitely a trick question, and don't worry about it, inshallah. At least now we learned that the Hanabila and Imam Ahmad say that it's obligatory to rinse the mouth and nose in both wudu and ghusl. Yes, sister.
Honestly, I have a few questions, but my two main questions concerning the text are questions 12 and 16.
Okay, please state the question number 12.
About they took salah only performing tayammum, and then they found water, and did he have to break his salah and renew his wudu, and so on?
Zayd could not find water while traveling, so he made tayammum. While praying, his friend told him that they found water. Okay.
Can I just, before you answer, can I just state my other question?
No, you go ahead and tell me. Let's take one question at a time, please.
Okay.
So what's your question regarding this? What's the right answer?
The right answer is he had to break his salah and renew his wudu, right?
Yes.
But I was confused, and then how I consoled myself is that according to his book.
Okay, let's take a look at the book. Look at the chapter of Tayammum, the nullifications of Tayammum, section on what invalidates Tayammum at the end. He says it is invalidated by anything that invalidates purification with water, meaning the things that break your wudu or require ghusl. The expiration of time and the ability to use water even if he's praying. Meaning, if he's praying and he's now able to use the water, his tayammum becomes invalid, his tahara, his purification now becomes invalid. This is where you have to understand it from this statement. It might not be explicit, but it is more explicit, and this is why you have to understand how to extract a scenario and its ruling based on this text. One is to understand the concepts, and two, how to apply it in any scenario, taking the ruling from the text.
My other question is question number 15. What causes the wudu? What causes what causes us to break the wudu?
Okay.
I was really confused about that question.
Okay, basically,
I mean, is this all of this based on a man, on men only, or what?
where the question, can you state the question?
What causes out of private parts breaks the wudu?
Okay, one moment then.
What comes out of private parts breaks the wudu?
Yes, okay, according to the author, what comes out of the private parts breaks one's wudu. In all cases, or only if it's a lot, only if it's urine, stool, or gas, only if it's impure.
Yeah.
According to the author, it's in all cases. If you look at the nullifications of wudu,
Yeah, I understand according to this author.
yes.
I mean, is this in general too, like,
Yeah, for example, if a stone comes out of a person's private, it breaks his wudu according to the author, because usually it has some sort of urine, for example, or stool that comes along with it. And it takes the same ruling as urine or stool.
okay, I understand that, but there is like, for us women, it's different, it's only based on...
Are you talking about cervical fluid?
Exactly.
Okay, cervical, women have three types of fluid. They have fluid during orgasm, and that requires ghusl. And then they have fluid due to desire, and that requires washing it and performing wudu. Washing the area and performing wudu. It's considered najis, that only. The first one's considered pure. And the last one is cervical fluid that comes out throughout the month without any desire, and this, according to the correct opinion, is pure. And according to the correct opinion, it does not break one's wudu. The reason is that this happens and occurs a lot to women at all times and places, and if it was something that broke the wudu, the female companions would have definitely asked the Prophet ﷺ about it, and he would have definitely gave them a ruling regarding it. So the original ruling is that it does not break the wudu. So therefore, when the author says the two private parts, he means the urinary tract and the anal. Okay, he's not discussing the opening for women where period blood, where other fluids cervical fluids can come out. Yes, he means the urinary tract and the anal. We can save that, inshallah, the questions regarding the text. We'll take it as we take each chapter. We're going to cover each chapter, inshallah, an overview, and you can ask regarding what we take here in class or regarding the text, bidnillah. Any other questions from the brothers or sisters regarding the quiz only? Okay, let's begin, inshallah. Okay, the first question is, why do we study fiqh? Okay, let's get one response from the brothers, one from the sisters, quickly. Why do we study fiqh? Why are we studying fiqh? The rulings of tahara, salah, zakah, siyam, hajj, nikah, divorce. Yes, brother.
So that we can implement the Quran and the Sunnah in our lives.
So we can implement the Quran and Sunnah. Okay, very good. Sisters? Why are we studying fiqh? Because there's good jobs out there for those who know these rulings?
Find out to know the knowledge about Quran and Sunnah, to know what is halal and haram in day out.
Good, to know what's halal and haram from, in our daily lives. Sisters, I want to hear from the sisters.
We agree with both of those. Fiqh is very essential to the details of how to practice Islam.
Very good. Details on how to practice Islam. So here we say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and I did not create mankind and jinn except to worship me, meaning worship me alone. So how do we worship Allah? As Allah and His Prophet have commanded. We can't worship Allah as we wish. And worship covers the actual rituals of Islam, like prayer and hajj and fasting and zakah and tahara. Likewise, it covers how to live our daily lives, marriage and divorce and so forth, financial transactions, all our daily issues. Now we have two types, different types of Islamic rulings. There's ones that are explicitly mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah, and this you usually find the scholars agree upon, and you just have to know it. Like that this prayer is obligatory, having wudu for the salah and being in a state of purity before praying is obligatory, and that you have to fast Ramadan, and so forth. Then there are things that are not explicitly mentioned. Those are to be extracted by the scholars based on meticulous rules and principles that are derived from the Quran and Sunnah and the knowledge of the Arabic language. It's where you look at the science of usul al-fiqh and the science of hadith, the authenticity of it, and the sciences of the Arabic language, because the Quran and Sunnah came in the classical Arabic language, so the scholars have these very strong set out principles to derive rulings. And as we saw before, there are certain things that there's no room for difference of opinion, and there are certain things that there is room for difference of opinion. And this is the scholar's job. Now also another type of fiqh, there are classical issues of fiqh that were known during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Like what breaks a person's wudu, what requires ghusl, and so forth. And now there are contemporary modern issues that come up and that have come up throughout the ages. The scholars must go back to these principles and to the text of the Quran and Sunnah and the legacy that was left behind by the previous scholars to come up with the correct answers as close as possible as they can to the rulings that are intended in the Quran and Sunnah. For example, a person who has kidney dialysis, does this break their wudu? They extract the blood from them, clean the blood and bring it back into their system. Does this break their wudu? Does it break their fasting? A person who has a catheter attached to them which pulls out urine because they're not able to urinate on their own. They're sick in the hospital and the catheter extracts the urine from them whenever directly, and it puts it in a bag that's attached to them. How does this affect their wudu? How does it affect their prayer, and so forth? These are contemporary modern issues that are studied by the scholars based on principles that are derived from the Quran and Sunnah. So we must learn these rulings that apply to our daily lives, or even if it doesn't directly apply to us, if we will need it or other Muslims may need it, this is extra knowledge that is needed to be understood by certain people to be able to teach the Muslims how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how to fulfill His commands. What is the meaning of fiqh? Let's see here, before we begin. Sisters, what is the meaning of fiqh in the Arabic language? فقه يفقه, the verb. فقها or فقها, yes. Okay, that's from the brothers. Sisters? It means understanding, as the brother said. Now, in terms of when we study fiqh, what does it mean? In terms of this science, do we study in fiqh the pillars of Iman? Do we study the seerah of the Prophet? Like the way he lived his life, his battles, his history?
I don't think so. I think it's more about the rules and regulations of how to practice.
Rules and regulations, how to practice. Good. So this is where we say that fiqh means the knowledge of the Islamic applicable rulings. Applicable means they go back to your actions, whether actions of the limbs, actions of the tongue, or actions of the heart, like your intention. And you can't pray dhuhr without intending before it that you're praying dhuhr. If you're intending to pray asr, and then you realize that you should be praying dhuhr, there's an issue. Okay, so it's knowledge of the Islamic applicable rulings that apply to you as a Muslim who is obliged or legally accountable. Rulings which are extracted from specific proofs. And the sources of proof of fiqh are the Quran, the Sunnah, the consensus of the scholars, and qiyas, analogy. For example, we all know Quran and Sunnah. Consensus of the scholars, like their agreement that Salah is obligatory. The 5 prayers are obligatory. No one can come say, no, it's actually recommended. This goes against consensus of the scholars. That wudu is obligatory for prayer. Nobody can say it's recommended. If I don't want to make wudu, I don't have to, but it's recommended. This goes against consensus of the scholars. Qiyas. Wine is prohibited because, what reason? It intoxicates the mind. Therefore, the scholars say anything that a person intentionally takes to intoxicate the mind, except for cases of medical surgeries and so forth, where they need something, anesthesia, that's something else. But anything that a person takes to intoxicate the mind becomes prohibited, just like khamr or alcohol or wine. Even certain drugs and so forth. Because it shares the same reasoning that the original ruling was prohibited. This is called qiyas, or an analogy in fiqh. Other sources, statements and actions of the scholars of the companions, when there is no textual evidence. Because when you don't have a clear-cut text in the Quran and Sunnah, the Imams go back to what the companions said and did, the scholars. And they take their fatwas or verdicts or rulings as secondary sources of evidence. And if they agreed upon something or is well known amongst them without anyone disagreeing, it's like consensus, or it is consensus. But if it's one person who did something, for them it is a stronger view than going to reasoning and qiyas, or finding their opinion. A brief view of the development of fiqh. Quickly, we'll just mention that the rules came in the Quran and Sunnah as the Muslims needed, in stages. When the Prophet ﷺ passed away, we had the issue of consensus of the scholars. If the companions agreed upon something based on the Quran and Sunnah, then that was clear. Otherwise, if there was nothing agreed upon, they would try to look at the closest texts for the situation at hand. And then after them, the scholars started laying down the rules of extracting Islamic rules from the Quran and Sunnah. When Islam became widespread and the Arabic language started becoming weaker, they started writing down explicitly the rules of how to extract the rulings from the Quran and Sunnah as a code for the scholars. From the most famous of these books is Al-Risala by Imam al-Shafi'i in Usul al-Fiqh. the authenticity of hadith became an issue, therefore they developed the science of hadith, which was already known to them. The Arabic language was known to them. The sciences of usul fiqh was known to the companions. The science of hadith was not needed for the companions because they took from the Prophet. And if you're taking directly from a companion who's taking from the Prophet, you don't need to check the chain. Ibn Abbas tells somebody, the Prophet ﷺ told me, he knows Ibn Abbas is strong in memory and he trusts him, therefore he considers it authentic chain. But later on, the chain became necessary because now there are a lot of people involved. It's not just the companions. So the science of hadith developed. Details of the classic Arabic language became codified and mentioned in books. The four madhahib became more established, and the schools of the four imams, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, and Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, and Imam Ahmad, may Allah have mercy on them. And there were many other scholars and imams, however, Allah willed that their schools did not continue. They did not have students that will carry on their understanding and their opinions. And we have to understand that these four schools of fiqh are ways of understanding the Quran and Sunnah based on very set principles. And that when there's a clear-cut text, there's no opinion for anybody. You don't say Imam Ahmad's opinion is that Maghrib is 3 rak'ahs, or that Salah is obligatory. There's no room for ijtihad when these clear-cut things are agreed upon. But you say Imam Ahmad's opinion is that rinsing the mouth and nose is obligatory in wudu, but the other three Imams say it's recommended. Or that it is obligatory to make wudu if you eat camel meat, and it's recommended according to the other three Imams. Where there's room for difference of opinion based on different proofs in the Quran and Sunnah, or where there is no specific proofs in the Quran and Sunnah, this is where ijtihad comes in to play. And you have the four Imams, and they have their own very specific principles, some that are agreed upon, some that are differed. Their difference of opinion in the principles is legitimate, as well as in the rulings, the specific rulings that they applied or followed or established. There's a lot of difference now regarding four madhahib. You have definitely some people who try to shun it altogether, and some people who are consider their imam like equivalent to a prophet, where everything he's infallible and so forth. There are extremes. I want to know from you guys, what do you think is the correct stance of the four madhahib or the four imams and following them in your fiqh? I'll take from the sisters, then from the brothers. Just take a minute, discuss it amongst your table, and I'll hear a few answers, inshallah, regarding what you think is the correct Islamic stance regarding following the four imams, or our position towards the four madhahib and the four schools of fiqh and the four imams in fiqh. Talk with your neighbors and classmates for 1 minute, and let me know, inshallah. We'll take some answers. Okay, inshallah, I see everyone's very heavily engaged in this hot topic, but we are going to have to stop the discussion now and just take a couple of answers, and we'll shed some light on it. Okay, brothers, can we get an answer from you? Anyone want to share their answer? No? Yes.
We do believe that the all four.
I'll come to you, sister, in one minute. I'll take a question from the answer from the brothers and from the sisters.
We do believe that all the four madhab right, we should follow one of them. That the mistake of Muslims that they are going to look for the simplest way in this area from this imam and from the other imam. And so. To me, it's wrong. We should believe that all of them did their best with ikhlas, reach to the proper way, following the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We as normal people, we should follow one of them, not take a piece of here, a piece of here, a piece of here.
Okay, so the brother says that all of them did their best to understand the Quran and Sunnah. We should follow one of them instead of trying to choose the easiest opinion out of all the opinions. That is definitely in terms of not being allowed to choose the easiest opinion based on your whims and desires. That's agreed upon by the scholars. And the issue of being allowed, following one of them, the correct stance is that it is permissible to follow one imam as long as there's nothing that he goes against as clear-cut, that you know against a clear-cut text in the Quran, Sunnah, or consensus. There's consensus of the scholars that it's permissible to follow one of them, as long as you believe that he's not infallible, that he can make mistakes, and that it's permissible for all Muslims to follow any legitimate scholar. But is it obligatory that you have to follow Imam Malik? No, it's not. Or is it obligatory that you have to follow Imam Ahmad? No, it's not. There's not a single person that it's obligatory to follow except the Prophet ﷺ. These are just means for us to understanding the Quran and Sunnah in cases where there's no clear-cut text or consensus, where there's room for difference. That's one. Yes, sisters?
So we agree that obviously there's a middle path. There should be extremes with regards to how you choose to follow and certain aspects. So you shouldn't completely dismiss the scholars.
Please raise your voice.
And also you shouldn't attach yourself to one like we do to the Prophet of Muhammad. But at the same time, we disagree on we can't come to a conclusion on what is the correct method for following a method. Is it you choose one and you stick to that one, because it's better for you, or if you should look at the opinions of the different scholars and decide which one is stronger for your own case.
Okay, very good, very good. Jazakumullah khairan. Let me shed some light on this bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Who studied medicine in here? Medicine. One person? Doctor? 3? 4? And how many on the sister side? 5. Okay. There's certain things that are... How many?
Just one.
1, okay. There are certain things that are agreed upon by medical doctors. And then there's certain things that they differ over. Am I correct? Now, we have medical doctors who are professionals, who are researchers, who are experts in their field. And then we have medical students who've studied the principles of medicine and everything they need to know to become a doctor. And they're under the guidance of a medical expert. And then you have the person who does not know the difference between Panadol and Advil, or the difference between any medication. He goes to the pharmacist or the doctor and says, I have a sore throat and I need to get better soon, inshallah, what do you recommend? So you have those 3 types of people. Somebody in medical school who studied, and then somebody who's been working for years and studied, and he's a top researcher and top expert, and you have your lay people. Now, what's the role of the expert? To give his opinion in the field. What's the role of the student? To study and to choose the stronger of opinions once he's reached the ability to choose the stronger of opinions. He can read research papers, he can see what's stronger in this research, what's weaker. As for the layperson, can I give you articles written by medical researchers and say choose the stronger of opinion? And you don't know anything about chemistry or anatomy or physiology or side effects and so forth? No, you can't. And nobody accepts this in the medical field. And doctors now hate a person who just like Googles something on medicine and then he tries to tell the doctor that he's wrong because he's read on a website that this causes this it really upsets doctors. Same thing with Islam. Islam does not stop knowledge and seeking knowledge and learning the Quran and Sunnah. Anyone is welcome to memorize the Quran and Sunnah and the Arabic language and the science of usul and science of hadith. But Islam knows that people are at different levels. A farmer who doesn't know anything except his farm cannot be told choose the stronger opinion, and this is a topic of debate that goes back to science, details of science of hadith, details of usul al-fiqh, details of the Arabic language that these scholars understand. And if you tell that farmer open the Quran and Sunnah or open the big encyclopedias of fiqh and read and choose the stronger opinion, this is academically incorrect. And it will just cause confusion for him. But the person who has studied the Arabic sciences, the Islamic sciences of the Quran and Sunnah and fiqh and hadith and so forth, and has developed himself over years under the guidance of scholars and so forth, he has a lot more ability to understand the opinions and their proofs and what's stronger and so forth. Now remember, we're talking about things that there's room for difference of opinion, not whether salah is obligatory or not, whether fasting is obligatory or not. And when you see the books of fiqh and their debates, the very strong opinions that can be debated for sometimes a book, 50-page book on one issue. Is there zakah due on jewelry or not? Very strong khilaf, for example. So alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. But he did not specify you have to follow this person or that person, Ibn Abbas or Ibn Mas'ud, or Malik or Shafi or Ahmad or Abu Hanifa. But to make life easier, you are allowed to choose any imam to follow if you know his opinions, if he's a legitimate scholar, well known in the Islamic field. And even nowadays, if you have access to a scholar or a mufti or somebody who's well known and a legitimate scholar, you can ask him as well, even if he goes against the madhab you're studying. As long as you are not trying to follow the easy way out to follow your desires. I want this fatwa, therefore I'll ask until I get it. Or I want this fatwa, I'll research till I find it. And that's what I'll follow, your desires. Or there's khilaf, therefore I'll follow whatever I feel like. No, you follow a trustworthy scholar, whether he's an imam of the past, that you follow him and study his fiqh and follow it, or a mujtahid or a scholar of this century. Now also, we're going to talk about the roles of the three levels, we touched upon it. So therefore, the scholars agree that it's obligatory upon the layperson to ask a scholar. Obligatory. And only people of innovation said it's obligatory for the layperson to go to the Quran and Sunnah and derive his own rulings. The Ahl Sunnah agree that it is obligatory upon the layperson to ask a scholar, and that if he asks a trustworthy scholar, he trusts his knowledge and his piety, and he tells him to do something and he does it, that khalas, he did his part. And if there's a mistake, it's on the scholar. Now the only issue is, do I have to follow one person? No, you don't have to. It's not obligatory. Nor did Allah, the Prophet ﷺ oblige it, nor did the companions say we have to ask Abu Bakr on everything and we can't go differ. The lay people of the companions asked the scholars of the companions, whoever it was. And if they were people of knowledge, they would say, no, there's a hadith, there's a ayah, and they would discuss it. And likewise, for us, we can follow scholars of the past, whether it's one person or scholars of the current. Now, the issue is, you can ask whichever scholar you have access to, and he'll give you an opinion, and you can follow it if he's a legitimate scholar. The only reason scholars of the past tried to follow one madhab so that to stop people from playing around and to stop people from choosing whatever opinion they feel like choosing. That's the only reason. It's not because they believed that this person was correct in all cases or that he was, and so forth. And then we also find extremes in the people who believe their opinion is correct, and if anybody follows another opinion, they'll physically or verbally abuse them and so forth. This is completely unacceptable in Islam. Likewise, telling a lay person who doesn't know anything about the Arabic language or the sciences of Islam, go to the Quran and Sunnah, extract rulings on your own, is a disaster, Islamically. And you come up with opinions that no scholar has ever said before. And even if he comes with a correct opinion, his methodology is incorrect. So therefore, we have to give scholars their credibility and trust in them and follow them. And all scholars agree that if a scholar goes against a clear-cut text of the Quran or Sunnah or consensus, that his opinion is not to be followed. Just to let you know. So inshallah, that makes things clear. So now we'll talk about the different levels of studying fiqh. The first step in studying fiqh, usually as a student, you try to fully understand one issue and its ruling until you finish a whole book of fiqh, according to one valid opinion. Whether in the end you take that opinion or not, when you become advanced, that's a different story. For example, this simple text of Umdat al-Fiqh, that we have the chapter of Tahara, the 10 chapters in Tahara, has 1,660 issues from beginning of fiqh to the end. 1,660 issues. If you count the issues of Tahara, maybe you'll find them maybe to be 100 or so. Okay? Now till the end of fiqh, following all chapters of fiqh, that's 1,660 issues. That's the most basics without details. Just the ruling. And he mentions one hadith or one ayah per chapter usually. The second, to understand it fully, so when we're talking about rinsing the mouth and nose, how do you rinse the mouth and nose, what's acceptable, what's not? When we're talking about fluids that come out of a person, what types they are they pure or not? Or do they break your wudu or not? Do they require ghusl or not? Understanding each concept completely so that if it occurs, you can understand its ruling. That's the first step. To know the full situation, understand it, picture it, not have any confusion regarding it, and its Islamic ruling. Is it obligatory, recommended, disliked, permissible, prohibited? Is it valid? Is it invalid? Do I have to repeat the prayer? Do I have to repeat the wudu or not? Next, knowing one issue with its proof from the Quran, Sunnah, consensus, qiyas, and so forth, statements of the companions, and how the proof shows the ruling, how it proves it. This goes back to the science of usul al-fiqh, and it may also have to heavily depend on the Arabic language as well as sciences of hadith if it's regarding the authenticity. Knowing one issue, like those 1,660 issues, now you know them with their proof. All these issues you mentioned, level 2 would be to know them with their proof. Level 3 would be within one madhab, you compare. You have multiple opinions regarding that issue within one school, whether it's agreed upon or there's a different opinion. The different opinions, their proofs, and the stronger of the proofs of the opinions in one madhab. For example, does touching a woman break her wudu? Within the madhab of Imam Ahmad, there's 3 reports. That it breaks her wudu no matter what, it does not break her wudu no matter what, or it breaks her wudu if it's done with desire. That's just within Imam Ahmad's opinions, and also within the other madhab. because they're based on similar principles. Then the fourth level is higher comparative fiqh, multiple opinions within various madahib, the four madahib, the other madahib that were there, the other imams, as well as scholars from the companions and the tabi'een, their proofs, a discussion regarding the proofs, and choosing the stronger opinion. Now let's take a look at this in actuality. When the four books written by Imam Ibn Qudamah, may Allah have mercy on him, are four main ones. There's another one, but the four that are mentioned usually are these four. Umdat al-Fiqh, which we have the chapter of Tahara, small volume, one opinion only that he chooses within the Hanbali school, has little proofs, maybe one ayah, one hadith, just to get you connected. 1,660 issues numbered. Al-Muqni' is like 5 times its size, a thick volume, multiple opinions within the Hanbali school, whether it's multiple opinions of Imam Ahmad or the scholars of the madhab. Multiple opinions. He'll say 2 reports Imam Ahmad, 2 reports according to his 2 opinions of his followers, without proof. So maybe the issues there, you'd probably have like 1,500 times 4, maybe 3,000, 6,000 issues at least in that book. Al-Kafi, a 4-volume book which has multiple opinions within the Hanbali school, but with proofs, with their proofs. That's Imam Ibn Qudamah's 3rd book. And the 4th book is Al-Mughni, 14-volume book with multiple opinions within the Hanbali school, within other schools, the opinions of the companions and tabi'een, their proofs, a discussion, and his choosing of the stronger opinion. This is like an encyclopedia of fiqh. And you have the same thing in all the 4 madahib. And some books reach like 10,000 issues at least mentioned in fiqh. That's let alone the issues of contemporary issues where the committees get together and study all the modern issues that in the different fields. So is it possible for us to study at level 4 when we have not completed level 1? No, it's like throwing a layperson, a farmer, into the last year of medical school where he's doing his thesis or dissertation regarding some very detailed topic. But you can tell a farmer, if you have a headache and whatever, take Panadol 500 milligrams, no more than 6 hours no more than 4 times a day or so forth, or 6 times a day, whatever. You can tell him that, he'll grasp that. And you don't have any problems with your heart or with whatever, you're not pregnant, and you can give him the basic rules of what to do when he has a headache or when he has a stomach problem. He'll understand that much. But you come and give him a volume book on these medicines, it's not gonna do him any good. So these are the steps that the scholars laid out to make fiqh easy, and this, we all know this in all other fields except for Islam. Unfortunately, many people think that they can do advanced level anything when they don't have the basics. Nobody in the medical field accepts somebody speak without authority and having studied, but they welcome anyone to study. And likewise, when we teach our children math or English, we always start with basic arithmetic, 1 + 1 = 2, and 1 - 1 = 0 before we go to more advanced topics. They take math over 12 years before they get to calculus. Likewise, reading, they start with phonetics and the sounds of letters before they start reading simple words. And we know this in all fields, but for some reason there's a misunderstanding in Islamic fields that a person who doesn't know anything or knows very little can jump in the ocean of debates of fiqh and hadith and tafsir and so forth and arrive at a conclusion. Is that clear? Any questions regarding this? We'll take from the sisters first. Maybe, yes, brothers.
I heard that some people, when they are memorizing books, they try to memorize the and they jump to like ulum and all. When it comes to memorizing books on these 4 levels, which levels should you ideally memorize the books at?
Okay, the issues of what to study and how to study and what to memorize, let's save that till the end for students who are actually studying. We'll save that as private conversations during the break or so forth. That's a totally different, deep topic. Yes, brother?
You mentioned the principle of like a method. What's an example of principle of like a method?
Okay, here's a principle in all the madhab that's agreed upon. If there's a command in the Quran or Sunnah, it's considered to be obligatory unless there's proof to make it otherwise, or unless the context shows you that it's not a command to begin with. Okay, that's agreed upon by all the four madhab. Now, something they differ over. If there's a prohibition, don't do so. Don't do such and such thing. لا تفعل. Does it mean that it's only prohibited or that it's invalid? And if it's invalid, is it only in acts of worship or even in transactions and so forth? And there's a lot of details regarding this issue of don't do such and such. What's the original ruling for it? Okay, don't pray after Asr. If you pray after Asr, will you be rewarded, or is it disliked, or is it prohibited, or is it invalid, and so forth? As a general principle. Then when it comes to application, it gets more, there's more details.
I was told that when it comes to classical issues, the correct opinion will be found somewhere within the form of that, and they won't stray outside of that. Is that true, or?
Usually, the vast majority of cases that, the stronger opinions within the four madhahib, even if it's not the most famous opinion. Because, the way that the madhahib have developed, they're taken all from the companions, and anything valid remains, and anything invalid does not withhold. But that's usually the case. But you can't say that as that it's 100%.
Hello?
Yes, sister.
We don't hear any questions of the men. Can they use the microphone, please?
Okay, what I'll do is I'll repeat their question, inshallah. Okay, next is role of the Muslim community. We have the scholars or the mujtahideen. Their role is to research and extract rulings for new issues, scholarly committees, and choose the strongest of opinions on classical issues. And their role is to teach and explain the rulings to the Muslim community, whether to students or general people, through their writings, lectures, and so forth, and to answer fatawas and to be judges in court who rule between Muslims. Now, the role of the student of knowledge is to gain more knowledge and to teach the people what the scholars say, and they are a bridge between the layperson and the scholar. And the layperson, the average person who does not, meaning he's not an expert or he's not a student in the Islamic and Arabic sciences, he asks the scholars or students of knowledge. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. And when a student of knowledge gives an answer, he's not giving his own personal fatwa. He's delivering a fatwa of the scholars and mujtahids. So when everyone knows their role in the community, things become easy. Therefore, a person who accepts Islam new or starts practicing, he shouldn't worry about all the different opinions. He just asks for a valid opinion and asks a trustworthy person, and that's all he has to do.
Is the student of knowledge that's in stage 1, for example, his understanding, is he obligated to answer a question? Or otherwise, what's his obligation within the community?
Now, a beginner student of knowledge is closer to a layperson, and there are advanced students who are closer to a scholar. A person who's just studying Arabic or studying level 1 of any science, and in general, cannot answer any question unless he knows it 100%. Even you yourself, or anyone above you in knowledge or below you in knowledge, cannot answer a question that he does not know. If somebody was to ask you, is it obligatory for me to pray the 5 prayers? What would your answer be? Yes, it's obligatory to pray the 5 prayers. Did you say no? Na'am, okay. Yes, alhamdulillah. Okay, so that you know. Fasting Ramadan, you know. You know you're not allowed to eat or drink or whatever in Ramadan. But somebody asks you a more complex question, you're going to have to ask. Okay, so things that are agreed upon that all Muslims know or that you've studied and you can deliver an opinion on. You know that Imam Ahmad says if you eat the meat of camels, then you break your wudu. You follow that opinion. If somebody asks you, you can tell them this is the opinion of Imam Ahmad. The one that I follow is that if I eat camel meat, it breaks your wudu. If you know that 100%. But that doesn't mean you're a scholar or anything. You're just delivering any knowledge. Or if you do not know or you have any doubt, do not answer and ask and get back to the person. So you're now also a bridge. Because you'll be asked a lot of questions and you'll have to be that bridge and not answer on your own, but connect them to the scholars and ask the scholars and get back to them. Any questions from the sisters? Okay, what is covered in fiqh? We have the fiqh of worship, the fiqh of transactions, the fiqh of family, and the fiqh of qada, or the judiciary system. Obviously, they begin with the fiqh of worship because it's the purpose of creation. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I did not create jinn and mankind except to worship me alone. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the purpose of our creation is to worship Allah. And we said in the hadith of the pillars of Islam, as mentioned in the hadith of Ibn Umar and the hadith of Jibreel, is prayer, the shahada, prayer, zakah, fasting, and pilgrimage. As shahada and iman, that goes back to the science of what? Belief, aqidah, iman, and so forth. So now we're left with prayer, zakah, fasting, and pilgrimage. We take it in that order. And we add purity because this is the... Why do we add purity before prayer? Why do we mention the rules of purification before studying prayer? It's a prerequisite. So why don't we just mention it in the beginning of the book of prayer with the other conditions of the prayer? They mention another condition of the prayer is to face the qibla. Anyone know why they have a whole chapter book of purity and there's like 10 chapters under, or 11 or 12? Yes? There's a lot of details regarding purification. Because it has a lot of details, it needs its own chapter. And yes, sister.
So when you're talking about purity, the definition is what? Is
We're-
it part of the intention?
No, we're going to discuss the meaning of purification once we start. Now these are all introductions to fiqh that are important, inshallah, to know. Next is fiqh of transactions. After these purity prayers, zakah, fasting, pilgrimage, fiqh of transactions, all the different finances, fiqh of family, marriage, divorce, rights and responsibilities, and so forth, fiqh of qada, the judiciary and legal system of Islam, which pertains to judges and rulers and so forth. Okay, before we start now, the actual book of Tara will take, inshallah, 15-minute break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah we'll begin. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Before we begin, I'm just going to mention, inshallah, the way we're going to go through this, because it's a lot of topics and concepts, and we want to have a proper methodology so we can finish and so that you can answer all your questions and participate. I summarized the most important things for you to know in these slides. Inshallah, we'll discuss the slides chapter by chapter. For example, I will explain the issues regarding the introduction of tahara and rules relating to water. Then we'll stop. If you have questions regarding what I said, or questions regarding the reading text, the actual book, Umdat al-Fiqh, from the book of the chapter regarding water and rulings of water, then we'll take a few minutes to answer them. I'm not going to mention proofs because that would require like 10 sessions at least. And it's just going to confuse you right now. I want you just to get the concepts down and understand I'm taking the most important things, and if there's a stronger opinion regarding the things that you need to know, I'll mention it. If you notice the text I did not mention, it's not mentioned in the footnotes anything regarding stronger opinions. There are some opinions that are, a few opinions that are weak. But only right now when I explain it, I'll explain what's most important for you to know, and the stronger opinion if needed. So after each chapter, we'll stop and we'll discuss questions regarding what we've covered or what's in the text. All right? So if you fear that you're going to forget a question, that you're going to forget your question, write it down. Or something that will make you remember it. And during question and answer, we'll take both from the brothers and sisters.
Before we start, I have a question.
Yes.
Just from the introduction, what's the difference between fiqh and sharia?
Good question. Fiqh and sharia. What's the difference between them? What is the difference between fiqh and sharia? Anyone know? Want to answer that? Sharia is the Islamic law revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran and the Sunnah. It's the religion of Allah that He revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the Sharia. Fiqh is the understanding of the scholars at their extraction of the rules, Islamic rules from the Quran and Sunnah. Therefore, fiqh can have mistakes of a scholar because he's deriving rules. He might be correct and he might be incorrect, but he's still rewarded for his effort if he's a valid scholar who has the tools. The Sharia itself is infallible because it is from Allah. The things that are known to the scholars that are agreed upon, that's part of the Sharia, without a doubt. The things where there are valid differences of opinion, now here, whoever has the correct stance has, he has found out what the Sharia of Allah is, but we don't know. We think that he's correct, for example. So whether this issue is the correct opinion that Allah revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, and if you were to ask the Prophet, he would give you this answer, we're not 100% sure with regard to issues where there's legitimate khilaf and possibilities. However, the things are agreed upon by the scholars where there's clear-cut text from the Quran and Sunnah, we know this is the Sharia of Allah without a doubt. The other issues of ijtihad, the scholars are trying their best to know what is the Sharia of Allah, but there is room for khilaf. Somebody asks, are all opinions correct? No, not all opinions are correct. Somebody says haram, somebody says halal. That can't they can't both be correct at the same time. So the scholars make their ijtihad to know what's the sharia of Allah, and they may be correct and they may be incorrect. Yes. Two opinions might both be correct. Two opinions might both be incorrect, and two opinions, one of them might be correct and one of them might be incorrect. Okay, so for example, let's say there are two opinions that are weak and the third opinion is stronger. Those two weak opinions are incorrect, and the stronger opinion that's closer to the proof or has stronger evidence is the more correct opinion. Two opinions can be correct. For example, like we said, if somebody chooses the tashahhud of reported by Ibn Mas'ud and the other one chooses the tashahhud reported by Ibn Abbas, they're both correct because they're both from the Prophet ﷺ and he did both. Somebody washes his limbs 3 times in wudu and the other one washes it 2 times, they're both correct. Which one's better is a different question. Alright? Or one is correct, one is incorrect. For example, eating camel meat, does it break your wudu? Yes or no? Some people say yes it does, others say no it doesn't. It's a valid difference of opinion. Those who, one of them is correct, and one is definitely incorrect, but because there are strong proofs for both sides, you can't say 100% that which one is correct. But you can say, I believe this one's stronger because of so and so. Okay, the meaning of tahara. Tahara is purification from filth. That's its meaning in the Arabic language. Whether it's purification from physical filth or spiritual filth. In the general sense, purifying your heart from disbelief and purifying your heart from sins such as jealousy and envy and so forth is part of Islam, is part of purification, part of tahara. But it is not what the scholars of fiqh speak about. When you talk about the science of fiqh, you're talking about a very specific purification, which is the removal of hadath, which is a spiritual impurity, and removal of najasa, which is a physical impurity. In simple terms, hadath is a spiritual impurity that prevents one from prayer. And we all know, if you break your wudu with any way that breaks your wudu, this is a minor hadath. Any minor hadath requires wudu. So if a person goes to the bathroom, sleeps, for example, does any of the nullifications of wudu, then he is in a state of minor hadath. He's required to perform wudu to remove this state and become pure. Or he might be in a state of major hadath, which requires to remove this urine and make his garment that he's praying in or his body clean or his prayer rug clean. He cannot pray with urine on his body or on his garment or on the place where he's praying. So the removal of najasa is also part of tahara. Types of purification. We have minor purification, means tahara. Minor tahara, which is performed by making wudu. If you have minor hadath, you do the minor tahara, which is wudu. Major tahara is attained by making ghusl, taking a complete bath. We refer to it as ghusl. Minor tahara, wudu, and making ghusl, everyone knows is performed by what? What do you use? Water, 7-Up? Water. What if you don't have water? Do you make wudu and ghusl with 7-Up? No. Even if you have 7-Up. You perform tayammum. The alternative of wudu and ghusl when one cannot use water is tayammum. That's another type of purification. If you don't have water or you can't use water. Then we have another type of purification is removing najasa, physical impurity, such as urine, by washing it with water. Okay? Remember, the questions we'll save once we finish the book of the rulings of water. If you have a question, write it down now. You'll have access to these slides, inshallah, so don't worry about writing them all down. Just understand what's being said. The rules of water. Okay, we have three types of water that the author mentions. Tahur, Tahir, and Najis. What does that mean? Water is originally Tahur. What does Tahur mean? Means it's pure in itself. If it's pure, that means you can drink it. If it comes on your clothes, there's no problem. And it's purifying to others. It's purifying. It has the quality of being able to purify others. What does that mean? What does it mean for it to be purifying for others? Yes.
What is impurity?
Again?
What is impurity?
If there's an impurity, it can purify. Give me an example. Yes. Okay, it can be used to purify from urine or any other physical impurity, najasa. What else? No, why? How does water purify us? Wudu and ghusl. We just said we have to use water to perform wudu and ghusl, and we can't use 7-Up. Can we drink 7-Up? Yes, inshallah. Can we drink tea and coffee? Yes. Is tea and coffee pure? Yes, it's pure. But it's not a purifier. It cannot be used for wudu or ghusl. You can't make wudu with tea or coffee, even if it's cold, iced tea. So, tahur means that it's purifying. It's pure in itself and it's purifying, meaning you can, when you say it's pure, you can drink it and it can come on your clothes without having to wash it. And it's purifying to others, meaning you can use it for wudu and ghusl. When does water become tahir? When does it lose its purifying state? When does it become tahir, like 7-Up and like tea, where you can no longer use it? Two situations. The first is if it changes due to a pure substance mixing with it and it changes its name. You take this bottle of water and you squeeze a lot of lemons in it until it becomes lemonade. It's no longer water, it's lemon juice. You can no longer use it for wudu or ghusl. It lost its purifying state, but it's no longer water, it's now lemon juice. Or you add a tea bag to it and it becomes tea. You can no longer use it because it's tea or it's coffee. Or you cook some chicken in it, it becomes chicken broth. You can drink it, it's pure, but it lost its purifying property. Why? Because we're only required to make ghusl, we can only make ghusl and wudu with water. It's no longer water. The second situation that the author says, which is a difference of opinion, this is why I have it in red, if it's used for an obligatory wudu or ghusl. For example, if somebody broke their wudu and they went and did wudu and gathered all the water that comes off of their body into a container, or they're in a state of janaba and they shower and they gather all the water that comes off of their body into a container. That water is used for performing an obligatory wudu or ghusl. The author's opinion is that it can no longer be used to perform wudu or ghusl. That's the author's opinion. The correct opinion is that it can be reused if you want to use it. Nobody probably will want to use it, but if that's the only thing you have available, you should use it. You must use it and not perform tayammum. Don't worry, I don't think this will ever happen to any of you, inshallah. But just to let you know, from an academic perspective, the author says if you use water and gather it from an obligatory ghusl or wudu, you can no longer use it for wudu and ghusl anymore. However, the correct opinion is that it's still tahur, it's still purifying, you can still use it for wudu and ghusl. Alright? But this will probably never happen to you in your life, so you don't have to worry about it. As for it mixing with other things and becoming soup or tea or coffee, this happens a lot. By definition, tahur is pure in itself and purifying for others. Every tahur is tahir. Every tahur is pure in itself. And it has an extra trait that it can be used for wudu and ghusl. It purifies others. As for tahir, it's pure in itself. But it might not be purifying. It's not tahur. For example, orange juice, apple juice. Everything here that you don't need to wash, you yourself are pure. But you're not tahur. You're tahir. Yes.
What if the water is just silted?
Okay, if there's a slight change to the smell, color, or taste, and it does not change its name, it's still tahur. Like you might have a little bit of lemons in it, a little bit of sugar in it, but it's still called water. As long as it's still called water, it does not change its name, then it's still purifying tahur water. We'll try to save the questions, inshallah, until the end of the chapter of water. When does water become najis? If any of its three traits, the smell, the color, or the taste, change due to an impurity mixing into it, whether it's a small amount or a large amount. Once, for example, urine comes into the water and it starts smelling like urine, or tasting like urine, or the color of urine shows in the water, then it's najis, it's impure. You can no longer use it to drink unless it's a necessity. You can no longer allow it to come on your clothes. If it comes on your clothes, you have to wash it, or your body, or your pair of clothes. It's impure. Once the color, taste, or smell changes due to an impurity such as urine falling into it, and so forth. Whether it's a small amount or a large amount. If it does not change, it's still pure, even if a drop of urine falls into it. The second scenario the author mentions is in red because of the difference of opinion. If it's a small amount, less than 2 qullas in Arabic, which is a large container, 2 qullas is 270 liters approximately. Okay? Or if you take your arm and a half, or your arm and a fourth maybe, like length, width, and height. 270 liters, approximately. He says anything less than 270 liters is considered a small amount of water. If a drop of urine falls into it, the author considers it impure. However, the correct opinion is that it's still pure as long as it does not, what? Change. As long as its taste, color, and smell do not change due to the urine, then it's still clean. Therefore, you should always know that water is pure as long as it does not change its color, taste, or smell with something impure. If you forget all the differences of opinion, just remember, any water that you see that is still called water, it's not orange juice, it's not apple juice, it's not tea. If it does not, as long as it did not change due to an impurity, whether it's the smell, taste, or color, as long as all the smell, taste, and color did not change due to an impurity, then it's clean, pure water. You can use it for wudu, for ghusl, for removal of najasa. If it changes by any of these three things, change due to the impurity, it smells like urine, it tastes like urine, it looks like urine, then it's najis. It's not urine, it's water that's polluted by urine. Any of the three qualities, if any one of the three qualities changes due to impurity, it's najis by consensus of the scholars. We'll move on. Can other things be used for purification? Pure water is used to purify others, as we said. We make wudu and ghusl with it, and we remove impurities such as urine with it. Can other liquids other than water be used? As for wudu and ghusl, no. We cannot make wudu with 7-Up or vinegar or anything else, or coffee, iced coffee or tea. As for the removal of najasa, there's a difference of opinion. The author says, no, you cannot. The correct opinion is, yes, you can. And this is very important to know. Therefore, if urine comes on your clothes and you have very soapy water that's more soapy than it is water, or vinegar mixed with water that has a lot of vinegar that changes the water's name, or you put a strong chemical on it to remove the najasa, according to the correct opinion, then this is valid and you can consider that thing clean as long as the color, taste, and smell are gone. Once the color, taste, and smell are gone, then it is clean. And this is why if you dry clean your clothes that has a najasa on it, once any effect of the urine is gone, for example, from the clothes, whether steam cleaned or any other method, then it is, according to correct opinion, considered tahir. Okay, so it's not like wudu and ghusl where you can only use water. Yes?
So brother, let me rephrase it in a question, okay, in order to understand it. If a drop of water falls in a vessel like, of urine, falls in a vessel like this, and the color, either the color, taste, or smell does not change. So this water is still pure.
Yes, this goes back to the previous issue. If you have a bottle of water, let's say a 1 liter, I think one drop of urine will definitely change the smell of that small bottle. But let's say a 2-liter bottle or a 3-liter bottle. One tiny drop of urine falls into it. Even let's say a 10-liter bottle, to make sure that it does not change. A 1 drop of urine falls into a 10-liter bottle, and nobody smells urine. It does not look like urine, the color does not change, and the taste does not change. Is it pure or najis? Pure or impure? Based on the correct opinion, it's pure. So it only becomes impure if its color or taste, or smell, color or taste or smell change. Okay, we're going against our rule. Let's finish the chapter of water, then we'll open questions. Write your question down. Cleaning najasa, physical impurities. Okay, we'll take questions regarding water before we go on to the issue of najasa. Yes? Oh, urine drops in a vessel and you're trying to make wudu with that vessel. Isn't it weird? Yeah, maybe it's weird. But nobody's going to do that if he has another option. If you have clean tap water, nobody's going to go to water that has urine that fell into it and use it. No one's telling you to do so. They'll tell you, go get some cleaner, better water that doesn't have any urine in it. But you need to know this when you have no other choice. Let's say you have a tub of water, because Islam covers all situations. The only thing you have, 1 tub of water. There's no other water. This tub of water, you use it for washing dishes, making wudu, and so forth. It's a container. And a drop of water urine fell into it. Or you have a well that you use for all your needs. A drop of urine fell into it. And you have nothing else. Do we say this water is najis, impure, you have to make tayammum now if you want to pray because you have no other water? Or do we say as long as it didn't change, it's pure, you can still use it for wudu and ghusl? You have to use it if you have no other choice. Is that clear? So nobody's telling you to use water that there's urine that fell into it if it didn't change. If you have another option, of course use the other option.
So in terms of something like if your pants have some urine on it or something like that, how much water, for example, needs to be put on it?
How much water needs to be put on your pants if a drop of urine comes onto it? That goes back to each person and the situation. If it's a small amount, you just basically have to know that once you wash off, pour water onto it and rub it enough, there shouldn't be the smell or the taste or the color of urine on your garment. Usually the smell is the strongest way to tell. So I can't tell you something specific. That goes back to your own ijtihad. In the end, you have to make sure that it doesn't smell like urine. It doesn't taste like urine. You don't have to taste it, but even the smell itself is enough to know. Once you think that it's gone, there's no smell, then you're fine. Question from the sisters regarding water before we go to najasa and impurities.
It's a kind of a medical question. Let's say you change the property of water by adding an alkaline substance such as baking soda. Is it still considered good for wudu or not?
If it's a small amount that doesn't change its name to something else, then it's still good. If it's a lot where it changes its properties to something else and it changes its name to something else, then it is no longer water. So you have to look at it from the customs of the people. If you were to give it to somebody, is it considered water or is it considered too much baking soda for it to be just water? Same with a drop of lemon. A few drops of lemon in a bottle of water won't affect its name. But if you squeeze an entire lemon into a small half a liter, those small waters that you have in front of you, it will change its name to lemon juice.
The correct opinions that have been mentioned so far, are they also from the madhab, or are they?
Many are from within the madhab, and some are outside of the madhab. I didn't try to add that because students start getting to where should I know which opinion it is. Both the opinions that we mentioned so far are within the madhab and outside of the madhab. Yes, any other questions? Okay, alhamdulillah. Cleaning najasa, physical impurities. There are three types of najasa, three categories. One is a heavy najasa, which requires washing it 7 times, 1 time being with dirt. This is the najasa from a dog, according to the authentic hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and a pig according to qiyas. The Hanabila said a pig is even worse and dirtier than a dog, therefore it takes the same ruling. And some scholars said no, a pig is normal, but we don't need to worry about that. If a dog licks a person, or licks any utensil or anything on a person, or urinates, or their feces come on something, it must be removed, and then it must be washed 7 times, 1 time being with water, 1 time being with dirt. So you mix dirt into the water, and then you wash it. Whether that washing with dirt is the first wash, or the 3rd wash, or the 7th wash. Any wash, it doesn't matter, as long as one of them is done with dirt, according to the authentic hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. For it to be clean, it has to be washed 7 times, 1 time being with dirt. Now, when does najasa transfer? If the dirty body is wet or the clean body is wet. Whenever there's contact and any of the two are wet, najasa transfers. However, if both of them are dry, such that nothing from the color, taste, or smell of the najasa gets transferred, like let's say, for example, it's something frozen najasa, that if you touch it, nothing, and you smell your hand, nothing comes onto your hand. Then it didn't transfer, even if it's najis. Do you understand what I'm saying? If something is frozen or very hard, and if you hold it and your hand is not wet or sweaty, and none of the smell or taste or color comes onto your hand, then nothing is not considered, the najasa did not transfer. For example, a hair of a dog might come onto your thobe, and you just brush it off, and nothing transfers from the dog, nothing transfers from that dog. You don't have to wash it, but saliva, urine, stool, or his hair that comes onto your wet hand, that will transfer a najasa to you.
Excuse me?
Yes.
I know we're not supposed to ask questions, but in this case, it's like really on my mind, because if you go to the West, the dogs always need from you. Is that now a West
According to the Hanabila, if anything from the dog comes onto you, or your body, or your clothes, or your plates or cups, then you have to wash it 7 times with dirt. The hadith mentions only licking. But some of the scholars took from this that all parts of the dog are impure. And the dog licks his hair to begin with. He licks his entire body to begin with.
But you know how typical, I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but how typical it is for the Muslims in the West. The family has dogs, the dogs are everywhere. I mean, we can never be clean. If I go to my cousin's house, I can never be clean. The dog is everywhere. I mean, like,
if you're in a situation where a dog is everywhere, the most important thing is that your body and your clothes and your prayer rug is clean. You don't need to worry about anything else. As long as he does not lick you, then you're okay.
so sniffing is okay?
Sniffing, it depends on if the water from his nose comes onto you or not. It's all about the water or the liquids transferring.
So if it drips, if the nose drips,
If the nose is dripping on you, you should wash your hand or whatever it touches 7 times, 1 with dirt. No, anything from the dog is najis. Of course, there's a difference of opinion. We're not going to discuss the issue of it. We just want to take this opinion, and this is the stronger opinion.
Can detergent replace dirt?
Now, if you don't have dirt, can detergent replace it? Yes, it can. If you do not have dirt. If you have dirt, the stronger opinion is that you have to use dirt. As long as the dirt does not harm your clothes, for example. If it's going to harm your clothes or anything, then even the smallest, while rubbing it 7 times under the sink.
Do we have to use dirt, okay, whereas we still have water?
What's that again? Well, again, brother?
In that case of having a heavy najasa, do we still have to use dirt, whereas we have water?
You use both. Water 7 times, one of those times is mixed with dirt. You have to use dirt with it. And even now they say medically, because of the certain worms in the dog's saliva, that only dirt can kill it and so forth. You can research that if you wish. Now, I don't want to dwell too much on questions. This is why I want to save it till the end. We might come out here expert on dog saliva, but we won't finish the most important things. And 99% of us won't have to deal with a dog licking us, but we already know the general rule. Let's save the detailed questions till the end, inshallah, so that we can actually finish. Because I don't want to, we want to cover all the topics and save the most important questions during question and answer time. There are many questions that arise. Write them down, inshallah, and we'll discuss them. Even if we don't finish them today, you can email them and we'll get them answered, inshallah. The second type is a light najasa, meaning the Sharia allowed for it to be soaked with water, and there's no need for it to be washed. What's the difference between soaking and washing? Soaking, you just pour a handful of water on the area that's najis, the light najasa, without having to rub it, without having to wring it. Washing, you have to rub it off along with washing, and you have to wring it until the najasa comes out. This requires only soaking with water and no need to fully wash it. And this is pre-seminal fluid that comes on the garment, and the urine of a baby boy who has not eaten food. It has to be urine, not stool. A baby boy, not a baby girl, and who has not eaten food yet. He's still nursing from his mother and he's not eating solids. If that urine comes onto the body, it is najis, but it's a light najasa. Therefore, you don't have to take off your clothes and wash it completely by wringing it. You take a handful of water and put it on that area. If it's more, then you need more water, but you don't need to. You just take a handful of water and pour it onto the area where it has reached. Those 2 things. Pre-seminal fluid on the garment and urine of a baby boy who has not eaten food. If he starts eating food, then it becomes like normal urine that must be completely washed. The third, a regular najasa, which is none of the above. It's not heavy and it's not light. It's enough to wash it 1 time or until it's removed, according to the correct opinion. That it's one time of washing is enough or until it's removed. And there's no minimum number required. The only requirement is that there's no more taste, smell, or color of the najasa. The author takes another opinion requiring 3 washes minimum, unless it's on the ground. That's the author's opinion. If it's on the ground, he says you can pour a bucket of water on it until it's removed. However, the correct opinion is that it's enough to wash it one time or until it's removed. Okay? I don't want to confuse you with who said this opinion and so forth. So if you know the dog and pig is heavy najasa, needs 7 with dirt. Light najasa are those 2, pre-seminal fluid on your garment and a urine of a baby boy who has not eaten food. And the third is regular najasa, which is everything else. There's another categorization of najasa. A najasa that is pardoned in the Sharia, meaning it does not require washing or soaking at all due to its difficulty. Which are 2 things: a small amount of blood. Let's say, for example, you have a nosebleed and some of it, or a wound, and it comes on your clothes, or a small amount of pre-seminal fluid on the clothes. Both of those are forgiven in the Sharia. So if somebody even prays with it on his garment without washing, without soaking, without anything, it's forgiven and pardoned in Islam. Okay? Number 2, a najasa which is not pardoned in Islam. You have to wash it whether it's a small amount or not, such as a small amount of urine, a small amount of stool, a small amount of vomit. These they are not pardoned, therefore they must be washed. These are mentioned in your text, and you'll have access to this, inshallah. So if a small amount of blood comes on your clothes and you pray without washing it, it's okay. A small amount of pre-seminal fluid remained on your clothes, it's okay. With pre-seminal fluid, 3 things need to be done. Pre-seminal fluid. The garment should be soaked with water. A small amount is forgiven, but other than that, the garment should be soaked with water. Number 2, the person must wash his entire private part. And number 3, a person must perform wudu. This is for pre-seminal fluid, not actual semen. Whenever the garment, just the area that got the pre-seminal fluid on it. What are some impurities? The original thing is that everything is pure unless there's a proof that shows that it's impure. What are some impurities? So if you know the impurities, then you can say everything else is pure. Urine and stool, except from animals which are permissible to eat. So human, animal, urine and stool, and all animals, urine and stool, except if the animal you're allowed to eat it, such as a sheep, a chicken, a goat, a camel, then their urine, the urine of sheep and its stool, the urine of a chicken and its stool is clean. If it comes on your throat, you don't have to wash it. As for any animals that you're not allowed to eat, a dog, a cat, a donkey, or human urine or stool, this is najis, it's impure. Must be washed from those 3 areas: your body, your clothes, and your place of prayer. Blood, human blood and animal blood, except the blood from sea animals that are 100% sea animals. They only live in the sea. The blood of fish is pure. And animals that do not have running blood, such as insects, they don't have like a running blood system. Flies, mosquitoes, their blood is pure. So blood except for these 2, fish and the like, and flies and mosquitoes and the like. Mayta. Mayta is any animal that dies without correct Islamic slaughtering. Correct Islamic slaughtering means 2 things. It must be uh, an animal that you're allowed to eat and that it gets slaughtered in the jugular veins and its throat. As for dogs, even if they were slaughtered, they're not permissible to eat, so it's maita. A human dies, they say the maita of a dead person. The only thing that's dhabiha, that's considered correct Islamic slaughtering, it has to be one, an animal that's permissible to eat, and it has to be slaughtered according to the laws of the Sharia. So the maita is najis, except for three types which we'll take. The humans, fish that live, animals that live only in the sea, such as fish, and animals that do not have running blood, such as insects, mosquitoes, flies, and so forth. We'll take that shortly. Alcoholic drinks, such as wine, beer. Any alcoholic drinks are considered najis, unless they lose their intoxicating properties. Ruling on containers. Okay, we're done with the chapter of water, which includes najasa. We'll take questions from the sisters and questions from the brothers, but we don't take a couple of minutes, inshallah. The most important questions that are related directly to what we spoke about. Yes, we'll take from the sisters first.
With regards to the baby boy urine, so is that not for baby girls? And where do we get that from?
Okay, it does not apply to baby girls. The baby boy who did not eat food, it's enough to soak it with water. As for the baby girl, it must be washed. This is from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, an authentic hadith where he says, يرش من بول الغلام ويغسل من بول الجارية, that the baby boy's urine can be soaked and the baby girl's urine must be washed. And the Prophet ﷺ was given a baby boy who urinated on his garment, and he asked for water, and he took the water and he placed it on the garment, and he did not wash it. So it comes from these hadith. The reason for difference, why did the Prophet ﷺ distinguish between the urine of a baby girl or urine of a baby boy? There's a lot of difference opinion amongst the scholars. But perhaps the medical doctors now have discovered difference in the actual content that is in the urine. One is more, has more certain chemicals that are higher than the baby in the baby girl's urine than the baby boy's urine. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Whenever we have things like this in the Sharia, if it's authentic from the Quran or the Sunnah, we take it, then and accept it and submit to it, then we try to search for the wisdoms behind it. Whether we find it, if we find some wisdoms behind it, alhamdulillah. If not, then we say Allah knows best. But there's nothing in the Sharia that distinguishes between two things that seem to be similar except for wisdom. And it does not equate between two things that look different except for a wisdom.
Thank you. Also, with regards to modern cleaning methods of the clothes, we typically just throw these in the washing machine. Is it sufficient?
According to the correct opinion, it is sufficient. If you throw it into the washing machine that has water, hot water and detergent, or cold water and detergent, as long as your garment comes out clean from the impurity. The scholars mention sometimes there's a stain left, no matter how many times you wash it, the blood stain, for example, will remain and so forth. They said this is forgiven. And there's a hadith regarding this, that its remnants after you wash it, it's forgiven. If the color does not go away, no matter how many times you wash it, this is forgiven. Or sometimes the smell might be very difficult for it to go, but you washed it several times and it still remains. This is forgiven. Yes? Again? We'll come to what the nullifications of wudu are. There are 7 that are mentioned in the text. Alcohol comes on your clothes. Does it break your wudu? Look at the nullifications of wudu. Is that one of them, alcohol coming on your clothes? And that's the beauty of studying these texts. If you understand these concepts, those 7 things are what break your wudu. Nothing else breaks your wudu. Okay, go ahead, brother, finish your follow-up question, and then we'll go to the sisters.
So the drink itself is impure, but once you remove that clothes, you can carry the drink still on your own.
Impurity coming on your clothes, whether it's alcohol, urine, stool, or on your body, what's the requirement in the Sharia? To wash it off until it's removed. It does not have any effect on your wudu, except for the nullifications mentioned in the wudu. Yes, sister?
Is the urine of the turtle najasa?
The urine of what?
Turtle.
A turtle. A turtle, is it permissible to eat?
No.
No, yes? And if it's a sea animal and it lives outside, first of all, it's, according to correct opinion, it is, first of all, its meta is tahir. And if it does not have canines and eat animals, other animals, then it is, it's permissible to eat, therefore it would be tahir. So it goes back to that issue.
There's a question from the sisters about a lizard attaching if it falls on the food or walks on the food.
A lizard, all animals themselves are pure, except for 2 animals, according to correct opinion, dogs and pigs. What are a lizard comes onto your food. If a lizard comes onto your food or onto your clothes, you don't have to wash it off. Only if urine comes from an animal that's not permissible to eat, or human urine. Question here, do we need to take wudu after swimming pool? What do you guys think? Does swimming in a swimming pool nullify your wudu? Or swimming in the sea? No, it does not, unless you broke your wudu in the swimming pool.
But how about the high urine?
If there's actual urine in the swimming pool, you can smell it. You're like in a kid's swimming pool and it smells like urine. Then yeah, it's najis. We don't know. What's the original ruling? Is everything pure unless you know otherwise, or everything impure unless you know it's pure? Everything is pure unless you know otherwise, unless you smell, taste, or see the najasa, or you have any way to know. Yes. We will discuss them in the containers chapter right now. What do you think? Water is water? Oh, chlorinated water, can you make wudu with it? That's a good question. If it does not change, it's still considered water. According to correct opinion, it is purifying. As long as swimming pool water is still considered water, even if it has chlorine in it, or bleach or whatever, as long as it's not so much that it changes, that the bleach or the chlorine overtakes the water, then it is considered tahir. Tahur, you can use it for wudu. It's better to use fresh water if you can. But if it becomes so much, like let's say you have Clorox, and it's so much that it overtakes the water, then no, it's no longer water. It's like detergent now.
Alcoholic drinks does not fall under the same thing as alcoholic swabs.
Leave the issue of alcoholic swabs. There's different types of alcohol medically, but we're talking now just about alcoholic drinks or things that have alcoholic drinks in them, the ones that intoxicate, not the ones that kill a person, that if you drink it, like what's in gasoline and so forth. Okay, any questions from the sisters before we move on? Okay, ruling on containers. Gold and silver containers are prohibited to use or to keep, whether you use them for wudu or eating or drinking or any other purposes. Even if it's small amounts. except for a small amount of silver for necessity. What's necessity? Anything that's not for beautification purposes, whether it's to strengthen the container or to fix a broken container. There's a prohibition regarding this, and the exception for this also, there's proof for it. Number 2, containers are made of impurities are prohibited to use, such as those made of pig skin. Number 3, it's permissible to use all other material, even if it's expensive, such as precious metals. However, it might be prohibited if a person is falling into israf, which is overindulgence, or overspending above one's mean, which is prohibited in general. Overspending above your means for luxury items is prohibited in the Quran and in the Sunnah. But however, if somebody's rich enough and he's gifted, whether he's gifted it or he makes it or he buys it and it's within his means, then it's permissible. But the Prophet ﷺ was a very simple man, and he made wudu from any container that he would find as long as it's pure. And he prohibited gold and silver. Number 4, it's permissible to use containers and clothes of non-Muslims. And it's considered pure unless one knows it to be impure. If you know that their clothes or their containers were impure and were not washed, then in this case it's considered impure. Otherwise, the original default ruling is that they're considered pure, and it's permissible to use them. These are obviously used items. If they're brand new items, then it's definitely pure. Okay, the scholars talk about the ruling of Mayta. Why? Because in the past they used to make containers out of what? Not plastic, not out of skin, animal skin. So we need to know what skin is permissible, what's pure and what's not pure. All animals are pure in life while they're alive, except for dogs and pigs, according to the correct opinion. So if they touch you while they're alive, they're pure, just like touching a chair, except for dogs and pigs. All mayta are impure, except for 3. Any animal that dies is impure except for 3. Humans, whether Muslim or non-Muslim. Number 2, animals that live in the sea 100%, like fish. And 3, animals with no running blood, such as insects, mosquitoes, flies, and so forth. If they die, those 3, if they die, then they're considered pure. How about a sheep that dies by itself, without Islamic slaughtering? Pure or impure? It got run over by a car, for example. A sheep or a camel. It's impure, it's mayta. When is the sheep considered pure then, after it dies? Only if it's Islamically slaughtered. As for its blood that gushes out, it's najis. But the actual sheep, its meat, its skin, its head, everything in it, after the blood gushes out of it, is pure. The only thing that's impure while slaughtering it is the blood that gushes out. Okay, parts of a mayta. They used to use parts of animals for many things. Anything above the skin, which is the fur, the hair, the feathers, is considered pure, whether it's cut off during their life or after. If it's an animal that was pure in life, meaning anything other than a dog and a pig. So if you find a dead animal, such as a sheep or a donkey or anything, and the hair is used for anything, the hair is considered what? Pure or impure? Pure. The only hair or feathers or fur that's impure is what? The hair and the fur of a dog or a pig. So all hair from any pure animal of a mayta is pure except for dogs and pigs. The actual skin now, there's many opinions. The author says, the opinion 1 is that all skin is impure, whether it's tanned or untanned. But it's permissible to use it to store dry items once it is tanned, if it was pure in life. That's the author's opinion. The stronger opinion is that it's pure if it fulfills two conditions. If it is tanned and if it's an animal that one is allowed to eat. Meaning a sheep's skin, if it's meita, you can use it, or a camel skin, if you tan it. But dog skin or donkey skin is not allowed to eat. Therefore, you cannot use its skin, whether it's tanned or not. There's a strong difference of opinion. People ask about genuine leather and so forth. It goes back to this issue. But since there's a strong difference of opinion, if somebody takes the other opinion, don't worry about it. But the safer and stronger opinion is that it's only pure if it's an animal that you're allowed to eat and that it's tanned. All right? Why did the author say that if you can use it to dry, store dry things? Because the najasa does not transfer. So you can put, for example, coins in it or rice, which is not wet. But water, juice, and so forth, no, it will transfer the najasa according to the author. The stronger opinion is skin of a meita is what? Pure only if two conditions are fulfilled. One, it's an animal that's permissible to eat, and two, it gets tanned, where they remove the filth from it through a chemical process. What about animals that are Islamically slaughtered, that we're allowed to eat, like a sheep or a camel? If it got slaughtered, what's the ruling on its skin? Thumbs up, it's pure. It's not meita, therefore it's pure. Therefore you can use it even if you don't tan it. How about a dog that gets slaughtered? Can you use its skin? Bad example. No, you can't, because it doesn't. Slaughtering it has no effect on it. It's like a meita. It's a meita.
Even if it's tanned.
Huh?
If it is tanned, then...
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Animals only, the skin is pure from a meita if it's allowed to eat and it's tanned, or if it's and it's pure all. If it's slaughtered Islamically and it's allowed to eat, then you don't even need to tan it. Now what's below the skin, the meat, the bones, and everything underneath the skin, this is all considered impure from a meita. Okay? Except for the three things that we said, there's three meitas that never become impure. Humans, animals that live in the sea 100%, and animals with no running blood. So if somebody wants to make a pure container out of skin, they should use either a slaughtered animal that's permissible to eat, whether they tan it or not, or an animal that's permissible to eat once they tan its skin, if it's a meita, if it dies without slaughtering. Okay, we finished that chapter. Any questions? Take the brothers this time and then the sisters. Yes, brother. Yes, there's a very strong difference of opinion regarding using skin of animals that you're not allowed to eat. Snakes, crocodiles.
So question, you say that all big animals are impure except for humans. This sentence makes the human being or animals under the
Of course, human beings by scientific classification are animals. They are animals that have intelligence. So they talk about the fuqaha, they say that, but we're talking about now scientific classification, not animals that don't speak. Even they say the insan hayawan al-natiq means he has life, he grows, he breathes. Yeah, we're not talking about the degrading animal. We're talking about the animal from he's not a plant. Nor is he a solid object, he's an animal. Okay, but Allah honored the human through intellect.
You said that the meita is impure except for the humans, either Muslims or non-Muslims. So
Again.
You said that all the humans are, the meita is impure except for three. One of them is a human.
Yes.
Except Muslims
Yes.
Well, let's look at Quran.
إنما المشركون نجس. Very good question. Very good question. We said that the human, if he dies, he's considered pure. If you touch him, he's considered pure. You don't have to wash yourself from him, whether he's a Muslim or a non-Muslim. But Allah says, إِنَّمَا الْمُشْرِكُونَ نَجَسٌ. Indeed, or the pagans or the polytheists are impure. How do we understand this? Spiritually impure. Their disbelief in their heart is impure. And this is why when a man marries, is allowed to marry, for example, a Christian or a Jewish woman, she's pure. And if he touches her, he doesn't have to wash his hands. So in terms of human characteristics of purity, they're the same. But a person's disbelief in Allah is an impurity, a spiritual impurity. This is why he says regarding Fir'aun, لَعَلَّهُ what's the ayah? No, the one of يَزَّكَّى أو تنفع وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ regarding not the Fir'aun وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ لَعَلَّهُ يَزَّكَّى that he becomes purified. And regarding Fir'aun, there is another verse that does not come to mind. That purification also refers to belief and disbelief. That the believer, when the Prophet ﷺ told Abu Hurairah that the believer does not become najas, and the Quran says that the polytheists are impure, this is referring to the belief, not to the actual physical body. And this is why there's no, if there was any other case, the Sharia would have mentioned that if you touch somebody who's not Muslim, it never requires you to wash your hands or wash your body from them. And you're allowed to marry, a man's allowed to marry a woman from the Christian or Jewish faith. Yes. Yes, sister. Please raise your voice, I cannot hear.
There are certain homeopathic remedies that are gold, and they're put in containers in a liquid form. Can they be consumed? And also 24 karat gold, sometimes they're used in desserts as containers. So what would we do with that?
The actual containers that are made of gold are not permissible to use or to purchase or to keep. As for consuming it for medical purposes, Allahu A'lam. That needs to be studied and see if there's a benefit and no harm in it. The issue is of its usage. Allahu A'lam.
One more question, please.
Yes.
This is about insects, specifically mosquitoes. Sometimes when, like, there's a mosquito on you, you kill it, there's blood left on your skin. Is this considered to be impurity?
Good. Blood of a mosquito when it gets killed. We mentioned that blood is najis except in two situations. Who remembers? Two situations, two animals. Animals that live in the sea 100% and insects that don't have running blood. So mosquito's blood is not impure.
But the blood is not from the mosquito itself, it's from the blood of the insect that it uses.
Yeah, I understand that. It's even if it was the human blood, right? It's from the human blood. Even the human blood, we said a small amount of it is pardoned. But when you look at it, when it's inside a mosquito, you look at it as the mosquito's blood. Because it goes through its system. But if it was human blood, let's say a person had a cut and it came on his clothes, then it's pardoned. A small amount is pardoned. But if it's coming from any insect, it's not considered impure.
I got it. The original human body is pure. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ. The other thing that Rasul said, كُلَّ إِنسَانٍ يُولَدُ عَلَى الْفِطْرَةِ. So the original body is pure. When this
Excuse me, brother, we don't hear anything.
I'll repeat his question, yes.
But the other ones, you didn't repeat them.
I'll try, inshallah, to not forget.
They can use the microphone like us. We have to get up and go for the microphone.
We don't have microphones. I'll repeat, inshallah. Yes.
Okay, sorry.
I got it in my mind now that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala خلق الإنسان أو خلق أي إنسان pure. الله سبحانه يعني إيه خلق على الفطرة وإن ما بينه يسبب. وبعدين الله سبحانه وإن من شيء إلا يسبب حمده. So when the soul is separated, so the body returns back to be.
Okay, the brother is saying that all humans are created pure and upon the pure religion of Islam. And when the soul is separated, it goes back to purity. But even when a person is alive, where his physical body is pure, the human body is pure, alive and dead. However, when the Sharia talks about purity and impurity of beliefs, it's something completely different than what we're talking about in terms of physical impurities. Jazakumullah khairan. Yes. Okay, well, let's move on. And if there's anything else, we'll save it till the end. If you don't get your question, you can email it, inshallah, to the chaplaincy program or, how's that going to work? Yeah, chaplaincy program. Rulings on going to the bathroom. Recommended acts. To say the dhikr before and after, the authentic dhikr, which is Bismillah, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubthi wal-khabath. It's mentioned in your text. But the second dhikr that's mentioned in the text is weak regarding entering the bathroom. It's mentioned also in the second one. وَمِنَ الرِّجْسِ النَّجْسِ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ is weak. And to say the authentic dhikr when leaving, غُفْرَانَكَ, I seek your forgiveness. As for the second one, it's weak from the hadith, Alhamdulillah alladhi adhaba anni al-adha wa afani. However, it's authentic from some of the companions. If a person says it sometimes, it's okay. But the ones that are always authentic is غُفْرَانَكَ when exiting. The second recommended act, entering with the left foot and exiting with the right foot. The third is going far from people's sight. But it's obligatory to cover a person's private parts or what another person is not allowed to see. But if you're outside, you should go far away where people don't see, so that people do not see you. Number 4, choosing a soft spot for the urine so that if a person, for example, so that they don't get splashback from the urine that comes on their clothes or their body. Whether it's on a toilet, therefore urinating in the water is better than urinating on the hard surface, which will cause splashback, or if somebody's outside in a soft area like sand, is better than concrete, which will prevent splashback. If somebody only has a hard surface, then they should move closer to it. The closer they are, the less urine will come back on them. How about leaning on the left foot, as the author mentions? The correct opinion is that it's not recommended. It's based on a weak hadith. Disliked acts. Makruh. Entering it with something that has the name of Allah, except for necessity, such as fearing that it will get stolen or degraded. As for a copy of the Quran, then it is prohibited except for necessity, such as fearing that it will be degraded. As for things that are like coins or reals that have the name of Allah on it, then this is permissible to take because of the difficulty. But in general, like if you have a book of adhkar, like the Hisn al-Muslim or a book of hadith in your pocket, then it's preferred to keep it outside the bathroom, as disliked to enter it without necessity. Number 2, avoiding urinating in natural cracks or holes. There's a hadith regarding it, and also they said that it can be a home of animals or jinn that will harm a person if they urinate in their home. As for areas that are made for the bathroom, that's a different story. Number 3, touching a person's private part or wiping it with his right hand. Touching with your right hand or wiping with your right hand the private part. A person should use his left hand as long as there's no necessity. It is disliked to use the right hand. Number 4, speaking without necessity. Some people go to the bathroom and have long conversations. This is disliked unless there's a necessity for saying something. The author mentions not to face the sun or the moon, that facing the sun or the moon is disliked. However, this is a weak opinion. There is no problem facing the sun or the moon. It's prohibited, as we will see, to face or give the back to the qibla unless a person is indoors. Prohibited acts: urinating in the paths of people or their shaded areas or under trees that bear fruits, because this all goes back to harming the believers and harming people. It is prohibited to harm others. Therefore, a person should go in a place where people do not use, shaded areas that people use, or their pathways, or anything like that, or under trees that bear fruits. It ruins it for other people, and it spoils, it makes that place najis. It's impermissible. We'll save the questions till the end, inshallah. Just write it down. Another prohibited act is facing the qibla or giving it one's back, unless you're inside a building, according to the author and the majority. Number 3, staying in the bathroom exposed longer than needed, according to the Hanabila. Why? Because they're saying exposing your awra without necessity or without need is prohibited. Some say it's disliked, some say it's prohibited. The Hanabila chose that it is. So if a person's like in his house, they cannot walk around naked unless they need to. Shower, for example. And others said that it is disliked. Therefore, a person, once they're finished using the bathroom, they should wash themselves and wash up and leave. They shouldn't stay there. And some people get diseases from staying in the bathroom for too long. How to wash or cleanse oneself. 1, wash the area with water until it's clean. If you're using water, until the skin goes back to its normal state. If you're using a napkin, for example, or toilet paper, until it comes out clean. And you only wash the outer part of the body and not the inner part. As for what the author mentions of clearing out the urinal path 3 times and tapping it to clear out the urine that's left, this is not recommended according to the stronger opinion. It's enough just to wash the area with water until it's clean, or to dry, to wipe it until the last wipe comes out clean. Number 2, to wipe the area with toilet paper or anything cleansing and pure. If somebody's wiping instead of using water, which is permissible even if you have water, it has to be a minimum of 3 times. That's a condition. Not 1, not 2, 3 times. But it's recommended to be an odd number of wipes, as mentioned in the hadith. So you either finish at 3 or at 5 or at 7. Once the last wipe comes out clean, you should stop at an odd number. It's preferred. But the minimum requirement is 3 wipes. And you have 3 options. One can wipe the najasa, the impurity, then wash it with water, and that's the best because it minimizes your exposure touching najasa. Or you can wash it only with water, which is second best, or you can wipe it only, even if you have water, which is the third level. But they're all permissible. What can you use to wipe? One can use any pure material. Therefore, anything impure is not allowed. That cleanses. Why do we say that cleanses? We already said it's pure. Is there something that's pure that does not cleanse? Can you think of anything that's pure, but it's not cleansing? It doesn't remove the najasa. Some glass. Why? Glass does not absorb najasa. Therefore, anything that's so smooth that it does not absorb the najasa is just going to increase your filth. Therefore, you have to use something that absorbs the najasa, which removes it. Napkins, anything, paper, but rocks. But if you're using glass to wipe, even if it's not sharp, if it's a glass rock, for example, or glass, anything. It's not going to clean anything. It'll just spread it because it does not absorb. So it has to be something that absorbs and cleanses. It cannot, except for animal dung, whether it's animals that you're allowed to eat or not, animal dung. If it comes hard, people used to use it to cleanse themselves in nature, but it's not permissible, even if it's pure and from a sheep, for example, or an animal that you're allowed to eat. One cannot use bones, as mentioned in the hadith. One cannot use food that is edible. But they can use, for example, a banana peel if they need to, or an orange peel, for example, or a mango seed that's dried up, because that's not edible. Food that's edible. Or anything respected, such as books of knowledge, or anything that has the names of prophets, or anything, whether it's in Arabic or in English or in any other language. Therefore, a person should be careful of written material because it will usually have respected things on it. Wudu. Okay, we're done with that. Going to the bathroom. Any questions regarding the etiquettes of going to the bathroom? What's that? What's that? Oh. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, brother.
So is there a bathroom, the way they built the bathroom, like a sink, toilet, is the whole thing considered a bathroom, like when you enter, or is it specifically the toilet, where do you use the bathroom?
Okay, if the bathroom, the toilet itself, is connected with, it's in the same area and room where the sink is, then it's all considered a bathroom. Therefore, you should not mention Allah inside of it or recite Quran inside of it. If the sink is outside and there's a special door to the toilet, then only the toilet area takes the ruling of the bathroom where you should not mention Allah's name inside, and you can mention it outside. Okay, here's a question from the sisters. My question is regarding women reciting Quran, or from online maybe, when menstruating. Is this not allowed under all circumstances? This will be delayed till the chapter on menses. Is the ruling same for Quran in soft form available in mobile phones for carrying inside the bathroom? That's a good question. If it's open, the mobile phone, you open it to the Quran, then it takes the ruling of Quran. You cannot enter the bathroom with the page open on your phone. If you close your phone and you can't see anything now, then it's normal. It's okay to take your phone. So even if you have Quran saved on your phone or saved in your heart, if you memorize it, you're allowed to take it in the bathroom. But reciting while in the bathroom or opening the page on your phone, then this is not permissible to enter the bathroom with it. And if it's a dhikr that's not Quran, then it's disliked. You should shut off your phone basically, or turn off the screen so that it's not visible. Okay, if the bathroom and toilet are in the same place, when we're making wudu, should we say Bismillah out loud or in your mind? If you're making it in the toilet, then say it in your mind, in your heart, without saying it out loud. It's recommended to not say it where the toilet area is. If you are outside, the sink is outside, then you say Bismillah outside. Like in the Masjid al-Nabawi, the sinks are outside of the toilet area. So you can say Bismillah and there's no problem. It's not a bathroom yet. A person cannot pray inside the bathroom. They can pray outside in an area where people are washing, or sink area, but as long as that area does not have the toilet inside of it, it's separated. If wiping after using the toilet without water, does that mean they cannot pray until they eventually use water? No, absolutely not. You can wipe, and as long as the last wipe comes clean, you're allowed to pray. And this is from the concessions of the Sharia, of Islamic law. You can pray and you're considered tahir. Any questions from the sisters? Okay, we have to move a bit faster now, and then we'll save questions. Wudu, what requires wudu? When do you have to have wudu? to pray any prayer, whether obligatory or voluntary or janazah, by consensus of the scholars. Tawaf, according to the jumhur, the majority. And touching the mushaf. Three things. Touching the mushaf, a copy of the Quran. Not a copy of hadith or adhkar. The mushaf, which is 100% Quran, or the vast majority of what's in it is Quran. It's considered a copy of the Quran. As for phones that display the Quran, this does not take the same ruling according to the stronger opinion. Allah knows best. If you're asked any question regarding anything else, does it require wudu? No. These are the only three things that require a person to be in a state of wudu. We mentioned from the obligations of wudu is having the intention of wudu. What's the intention? You intend to remove your hadath, the spiritual impurity, or you intend with it an action that requires wudu. You intend to pray dhuhr or fajr or sunnah with it. You intend touching the mushaf and reading from it. You intend making tawaf. Those are the intentions that you have to have. Usually people make wudu because you ask them, why are you making wudu? They'll say, I want to pray dhuhr. That's a good enough intention. Or because I just went to the bathroom and they want to be in a state of purity. That's the removal of hadath. Whether you want to be in a state of purity, the same as trying to remove your spiritual impurity. Or intending to pray, touch the mushaf, or make tawaf. Those are the intentions when we say to intend wudu. So therefore, if you wash your face just to cool off because you just woke up, or you rinse your mouth and you wash your face without intending wudu, you're just intending to cleanse yourself or to cool down, this does not count towards wudu. If you decided to make wudu afterwards, you'd have to restart. So you have to have intention before beginning the obligations of wudu. Description of wudu, I'm not going to mention this as mentioned in the text. The only thing is that raising your eyes above at the end, when you say the dhikr after wudu, the recommended dhikr, raising your eyes up to the heavens, that addition is weak. It's mentioned in a weak hadith. Otherwise, everything else in it is authentic. As for the required acts of wudu, we have the intention. We mentioned it's two types. Then washing each limb one time. That's the minimum requirement. You have to wash your entire face, including rinsing the mouth and nose one time. You have to wash your arms from the tips of your fingers until and including the elbow. You actually wash the elbows. You have to be careful not to miss spots. Somebody might say, all right, I already washed my hands in the beginning of wudu. Do I have to wash it again, or can I wash from my wrist to my elbows? Yes, brother.
The first time you washed was sunnah, but this is the third.
Yes, you have to wash it again from the tips of your fingers to your elbows, because the first time was a recommended act and it's not part of washing the arm in wudu. It's an introduction to wudu. So you have to wash from the tips of your fingers all the way to your elbows, including between your fingers. And then wiping the entire head and washing the feet until and including the ankles. Make sure you get between the toes, underneath, on the right, left, back, until and including the ankles, the two bones on both sides of both feet. Wiping the entire head and maintaining the order. Meaning washing the face first before the arms, then the head, wiping the head, then washing the feet. And being consecutive. You don't do the first half and then half an hour later you complete it. Then you'd have to start all over again. If it's minutes apart, it's still consecutive. How do we know if it's consecutive or not? If you're in normal weather conditions, are not too cold and not too hot, your previous limbs do not dry up. If your previous limbs dry up, then in normal weather conditions, then you waited too long. Okay? So it's like a minute apart, 2 minutes. Usually your limbs will still be wet in normal weather conditions. Recommended acts of wudu, saying Bismillah in the beginning, washing the hands before beginning wudu, over rinsing of the mouth and nose, except for a fasting person, it's disliked so that he doesn't break his fast. So he should rinse his mouth and nose, but not take in too much water. Soaking the beard and between the toes and fingers. So soaking the beard by placing a cup of water in your hand and then, or some water in your hand and soaking it like this, or to put water in your beard and to comb it with your fingers, either way. And if you're washing between your fingers, you wipe them with your fingers, or to take, for example, the smaller finger and to wipe between your toes. As for letting water reach between your toes, that's obligatory. But when we talk about soaking them, we mean by wiping also the finger. Okay? Washing the right limbs before the left, for the arms and the feet, and washing 3 times. These are all recommended. If you miss a required act, what's the ruling on the wudu? It's invalid until you complete it. And if you miss a recommended act, is the wudu valid? Yes, it's valid. If you have an invalid wudu and then you pray, is the prayer valid? The prayer is invalid. So you have to repeat the wudu properly and then repeat the prayer if it was invalid. Okay, can you wash 2 times? Yes, it's also mentioned in the sunnah. Can you wash 1 time? Yes, as long as you cover all the areas and it's mentioned in the sunnah. Can you wash some body parts 3 times and some body parts 2, like your face 3 times, your arms 2 times? Yes, it's also mentioned in the sunnah, but the majority of the wudu is preferred to be how many times? 3. If somebody did it 1 time and he covers, doesn't leave any part dry, then it's correct. A question for the sisters, what's the difference between wiping and washing? Okay, with washing, with wiping, you rub with your hand. With washing, you don't have to rub. Okay, what's another difference? Yeah. Okay, wiping is to wipe the area with a wet hand. Just as long as your hand is wet, you wipe the area, like your head or your socks, for example, if you're wiping over your socks, with a wet hand. Not a dry hand, a wet hand. It has to be a wet hand when we talk about wiping in wudu or ghusl. Now, as for washing, the water has to run against your skin. So it has to be more water. That's poured on your skin, and it runs against your skin. And sometimes if you don't have enough water, you have to pour that water in your hand and then rub the entire limb until the water covers the entire skin properly. Because if you were just to pour it, it's not going to be enough. But water has to run against your skin. Whether it drops from your skin or not, it doesn't matter. But it has to run against your skin. Therefore, it's more water that's used when washing than when wiping.
I have one question.
Yeah.
I didn't find mentioned. When you finish your wudu, don't you say the shahada?
Yes, it's mentioned in the text. After the wudu, you say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammad abduhu rasuluh. I'm only going to mention things that are not mentioned. I'll refer to the text. You have to go back to the text as well as what's mentioned here. The dhikr is recommended after wudu. If it's too crowded, the bathrooms are too crowded, can you take a bottle of water and make wudu? Yes, you can. As long as you fulfill the requirements of wudu. Go to a place where no one can see, or even in the bathroom, the woman's bathroom, you take a bottle, for example, and you make wudu. It's very handy in Hajj and in crowded areas to know how to make wudu from a bottle properly without missing any spots on your body. It's not a requirement to use a sink.
One more question, please.
Yes.
When the Shaykh was describing how in wudu, he talked about washing the head where you have to begin from the forehead and it goes to the back of the head, then back forward. Is that required?
That's recommended. The way that it's mentioned in the book, that's recommended. To start from the beginning of your head with both hands, go all the way to the back of your hairline and go back to the front again. That's recommended. The most important thing is that you have a wet hand and you wipe your entire head. The head is where the normal hairline starts and ends. And okay, now we'll move on to disliked acts of wudu. It's disliked to wash more than 3 times, according to the author. However, the correct opinion is that it's prohibited to wash a 4th time. And it's an innovation if somebody thinks that he's coming closer to Allah with it. And number 2, wasting water is disliked. If a person should minimize the water he uses and lower the tap enough for him to make wudu. It's recommended to use siwak in certain times. From them is before wudu. This is why they mention it. The toothstick. It's especially recommended in the sunnah when the odor of the mouth changes, when waking up from sleep, because it changes the odor of the mouth, and before the prayer, as well as before wudu. Otherwise, it's recommended at all times in general, except for fasting. A first fasting person after dhuhr, the author mentions this. It's either not recommended or disliked according to the author, but the correct opinion, even for a fasting person, it's still recommended for him to use siwak. And the hadith they mention regarding this is weak. So it's recommended at all times to use siwak. If somebody doesn't have siwak, toothbrush, toothpaste is also fine, but a person should be careful in their fasting to not use something that has a strong taste. We will not get into that, inshallah. So these are the rules of wudu. Okay, any questions regarding rules of wudu?
Regarding washing your hands after waking up from sleep at night, what if you were to cleanse yourself prior to washing your hands? Is your cleansing valid?
If somebody wakes up from sleep, it is required, obligatory according to Hanabala, to wash their hands 3 times before performing wudu. However, if they went to the bathroom and washed themselves, this is valid, and it's not a problem. But before performing wudu, and before touching anything, sticking their hand in anything wet, they should wash their hands. Before performing wudu, it becomes obligatory 3 times according to the Hanabala and the stronger opinion.
How about touching the hands of someone with what hands who's just waking up from sleep? Would that require you to rewash your hands?
No, you don't have to. Your hands are clean and their hands are clean, unless you know there's a najasa on it. You could. If the question is, if somebody wakes up and shakes somebody's hand, for example, do you have to wash your hands? No. Your hands are clean unless it's known to be not impure. But before you perform wudu, and before you stick your hand in the container, wash your hands 3 times. If you're waking up from sleep, it's obligatory. If it's any other time, it's recommended to wash your hands 3 times before wudu. Sisters, any questions?
I have a question. What about all of these different rulings for refugees and soldiers in the field? If they don't have water or clean soil, or they don't have wipe 3 times, or whatever it may be, do they just stop praying, or do they just go with their intention?
Never is there a situation, unless a person is insane or a woman is on her period, where a person stops praying. If they have water, they perform wudu, if they're able to. And if they don't have, they can make tayammum with sand or with the surface of the earth. If they're locked up and they don't even have any surface of the earth, then they pray without any wudu or tayammum, and their prayer is valid and they don't have to repeat it. If they're tied up to a chair, for example, and they can't face the qibla and they don't have any purification, they pray sitting down as they're tied to any direction.
Okay, thank you. That's what was my question.
Yes. Barakallahu fikum. Yes, brother.
Yes, brother. How about sleeping in bicycle? By sleeping in front of Imam al-Jama'ah? Okay, listening to his khutbah?
Sleeping during Jum'ah, we'll save that for the nullifications of wudu, inshallah. Yes.
We know that using too much water is not good, but is there a certain point of using a certain amount of water where you get a sin?
is it, when using a certain amount of water, does it become sinful if it's too excessive? Allahu Alam. The scholars mentioned that it's disliked. And a person should avoid this practice and try to learn how to use minimal water, even if he has a lot of water on him.
Why the Sheikh here this is only you should put water between the toes of his feet. Why he didn't mention also
Why does the author mention between the toes? He mentions between the fingers, but the Hanabila say the toes are more important because it's harder for water to reach there, so he has to take extra care of pouring water in it and wiping it with his fingers. It's recommended. As for the fingers, it's very easy for the water to reach, so it's not as important.
What is the sequence, please? Sequence of washing between the fingers of
It doesn't matter. There's no specific sequence regarding wiping the fingers. Wiping or washing the neck is not from the sunnah of wudu. There are very weak hadith regarding wiping the neck. It is not close to being authentic, therefore it is not recommended to wipe the neck, rather it is disliked. Yes. Any other questions, brothers and sisters? Regarding the issues of wudu we took. Rules of wiping over the socks. Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll take a short break. It's 11:05. We'll take now a 5-minute break and continue so we can finish. We're going to go through the rest of the slides and save questions till the end. 5 minutes only.
سواك. رواه أحمد بإسناد حسن. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: أسرعوا بالجنازة، فإن تك صالحة فخير تقدمونها إليه، وإن تك سوى ذلك فشر تضعونه عن رقابكم. رواه البخاري ومسلم. وعن أنس رضي الله عنه قال: مر بجنازة فأثني عليها خير، فقال نبي الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: وجبت وجبت وجبت. ومر بجنازة فأثني عليها شر، فقال نبي الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: وجبت وجبت وجبت. فقال عمر: فداك أبي وأمي. مر بجنازة فأثني عليها خير، فقلت: وجبت وجبت وجبت. ومر بجنازة فأثني عليها شر، فقلت: وجبت وجبت وجبت. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: من أثنيتم عليه خيرا وجبت له الجنة، ومن أثنيتم عليه شرا وجبت له النار. أنتم شهداء الله في الأرض. رواه البخاري ومسلم، واللفظ له. وعن أبي الأسود قال: قدمت المدينة فجلست إلى عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه، فمرت بهم جنازة فأثنوا على صاحبها خيرا، فقال عمر رضي الله عنه: وجبت. ثم مر بأخرى فأثنوا على صاحبها خيرا، فقال عمر: وجبت. ثم مر بالثالثة فأثني على صاحبها شر، فقال عمر: وجبت. قال أبو الأسود: فقلت: وما وجبت يا أمير المؤمنين؟ قال: قلت كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: أيما مسلم شهد له 4 نفر بخير أدخله الله الجنة. قال: فقلنا: وثلاثة؟ فقال: وثلاثة. فقلنا: واثنان؟ قال: واثنان. ثم لم نسأله عن الواحد. رواه البخاري. وعن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت: قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: لا تسبوا الأموات، فإنهم أفضوا إلى ما قدموا. رواه البخاري. وعن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال: قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: الميت يعذب في قبره بما نيح عليه، وفي رواية ما نيح عليه. رواه البخاري ومسلم. وعن المغيرة بن شعبة رضي الله عنه قال: سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول: من نيح عليه فإنه يعذب بما نيح عليه يوم القيامة. رواه البخاري ومسلم. وعن النعمان بن بشير رضي الله عنهما قال: أغمي على عبد الله بن رواحة فجعلت أخته تبكي: وجبلاه وكذا وكذا، تعدد عليه. فقال حين أفاق: ما قلت شيئا إلا قيل لي: أنت كذلك؟ رواه البخاري. وزاد:
That's tied around the man's head, and some societies wear it until now. If it's worn upon complete wudu or ghusl, as we said with the socks, that's the first condition. And the same time period applies for the socks. And it's only for wudu. If you have to make ghusl, you have to wash your head and take off the turban. Specific conditions, it has to have a tail. The turban has to have a tail to it. And it must cover the entire head, except for the areas that show normally when the Arabs wear turbans, such as the front of the head, the back of the head, and on top of the ears. A person can wipe with a wet hand their head, the turban, instead of wiping their entire head, if they fulfill these conditions. We have sound coming from the sister's mic. No, it's from here. Brother, Doctor Abdullah, please. The second thing, for a turban, can you wipe over a kufi or a hat? No, you cannot, because it's easy to remove. It's not like the turban that's mentioned in that hadith. As for women, the Hanabila said a woman is allowed to wipe over her scarf if it's wrapped underneath her chin. It can be loose, it has to be wrapped underneath her chin. It has to be wrapped. And this is authentically reported from Salama, the companion, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ. As for rules of wiping over casts and bandages, previous wudu or ghusl before is not necessary, as opposed to socks and turbans, because it's an emergency. A person might need to wear a cast and he doesn't have to make wudu. Likewise, a person must wipe the entire cast or the bandage with a wet hand. As for the socks, you wipe the top of the socks. As for a turban, you wipe the majority of the turban. Number 3, it should not cover more than necessary. So doctors who put on casts or people who put on bandages should only cover the area that's required, the area of the wound, and anything extra that's needed for that wound to heal. Sometimes if the wrist is broken, they need to go into the hand a few inches. Doctors know this. They shouldn't go past what's needed. If he just broke his finger, he should not have a cast all the way up to his elbow, because that's required to be washed. So he should tell the doctor, only put a cast on what I need. Anything extra, don't put a cast on it. Likewise, if he has a cut on his finger, he should put a bandage as big as the cut and anything else needed. He shouldn't cover his entire hand with a bandage, because he needs to wash the parts that are not needed. And there's no time limit for the bandage or the cast. Rather, you wipe on it with a wet hand until it heals and it gets removed. So it's not limited to 24 hours or 72 hours. And you can wipe over it even when making ghusl, because bandages and casts are there for emergencies and for necessity. It's not like the socks and the scarf and turban. So even if you're making ghusl and you're not able to remove, or it's harmful to remove it, then you don't have to wash it, you just wipe over it with a wet hand. Any questions regarding wiping over any of what has been mentioned? Yes, brother.
The author mentions that one makes wudu wiping over socks is invalidated if he takes off the socks. Is this correct?
He says two things, the author says two things invalidate a person's wiping. If he removes his socks, or if the time expires. So if he's praying and the 24 hours are over, his wudu is considered broken and he has to repeat it. Likewise, if he removes his socks, his wudu is considered broken as soon as he removes his socks. It's safer to not remove your socks. If you remove your socks, it's safer to make wudu. But the correct opinion is that if you take off your socks, it does not nullify your wudu. But you cannot wipe over your socks until you make wudu again. Likewise, if the time expires, it does not nullify your wudu. The 24 hours or 72 hours, if they expire, it does not nullify your wudu. You're still in wudu until you do one of the 7 nullifications he mentions. Okay? So if you're praying and you're praying a dhuhr and the 24 hours finish, you continue praying a dhuhr and your wudu is fine. But after that, you're not allowed to wipe over the socks. The time limit means you can no longer wipe over the socks or the turban or the scarf. Is that clear? And if you take off the turban or the scarf or the socks, the correct opinion is that your wudu is still intact. However, we still say that it's safer for you to redo your wudu. Well, let's take question from sisters, then we'll come back to the brothers. Yes, any question from the sisters? Okay, brothers.
I think the difference between you said leave the thick cloth socks. Socks that hold firmly to the feet and never overshoot the cloth or go past the ankles. So there is a difference, or in both conditions we should pass the ankles.
In all, is it a condition to pass the ankles in all cases? Yes. Any sock or khuf or anything, you have to, it has to pass the ankles. Okay? It has to cover the area that was required to be washed. So if you're wearing ankle socks that go below the ankles or don't cover the ankles completely, you cannot wipe over them. You have to take them off and make wudu and wash your feet. Yes, brother. Yes, you.
I think you answered the first one, but just want to make sure. So if you talk about wiping, everything we say about socks applies to the scarf and everything else.
Yeah, for all the rules for socks, leather socks apply to the turban and the scarf, meaning you have to wear on wudu, the time limit applies, it has to be made out of a clean material.
Second question, can you trust the physician for the cast or the bandages that it's only the area necessary, or?
Can you trust the physician? I mean, usually if it's a Muslim physician, maybe you should remind them, or you should trust them if they know that they're not going to go past what's needed. Yes, sister.
What about shoes? Some people pray with shoes.
Praying with shoes, same as socks. If you wear them after making wudu and washing your feet, and they have to pass the ankles. The last point. We said with socks, you cannot, if you have to make ghusl, you have to take off the socks and wash your feet with ghusl, with bathing, from janaba, for example. But for cast, it takes a different situation. A person has, his right arm is in a cast because he broke it. He has to make ghusl from janaba. He can make ghusl, wash his entire body except for the cast. He takes a wet hand and wipes the entire cast with it. He does not, we don't tell him remove your cast because you're in a state of janaba and you need to make ghusl. If a person was wearing socks, we say you're making ghusl, you have to take off your socks now.
Because most shoes do not cover the ankle. You are wearing socks and shoes, so should you wipe both of them?
If you wipe over the socks, you can pray in your shoes. The question is if you want to pray with shoes that don't cover the ankles. Wipe over the socks after making wudu, then wear your shoes. Then you don't need to wipe your shoes. If the hijab, a woman's hijab has to be wrapped underneath her chin. So woman wrap it. A woman might wear her hijab the way this scarf is just loose. She might just be wearing it like that and she has other things that cover her. Or she might be in her house and she's wearing it like that. She can't, basically it shows that it's tied underneath her chin. That's usually the way women wear it.
Second question for the cast. If it's one of those like for sprains or something that doesn't have a complete cast, just like one of those folders, can you, do you have to make them regularly?
When we talk about wiping over a cast, bandages, it's anything that needs to cover your body for medical reasons. It doesn't have to be permanent. It doesn't have to be completely covering everything. It could be partial. And anything that needs to cover a wound or for a healing, takes the same ruling as casts and bandages.
When you say wiping over the leather socks, what's the ruling with other socks?
We said even other socks, as long as they're thick and don't show the skin. There's difference of opinion, but this is one of the stronger opinions.
Going back to the sling, would you go inside and like wipe inside your arm, or would you kind of just go over the...
If you have a sling and you're able to wash your arm without harm, then you wash your arm. If you cannot remove it, it's harmful for you to remove it, then you wipe over whatever's covering your skin. Ankle brace, same. But the issue is it harmful for you to remove the ankle brace and wash your feet or not? That is a medical question that needs to go to a doctor. You say, I need to wash my feet 5 times a day when I make wudu, doctor. Am I allowed to take off this cast, or I should only remove it once a day, or I'm not allowed to remove it at all? Based on if it's harmful for you to remove it or not, you make your decision. If he says you can take it off 5 times a day, no problem, then take it off and wash your feet. You ask your doctor that question if you're wearing an ankle brace or an arm brace. Okay, next, inshallah, we'll move. Nullifications of wudu, very straightforward. Number 1, anything that exits out of the 2 private parts, meaning the urinary tract and the anal tract, under all circumstances, whether it's pure, impure, lot or little, or it's normal or abnormal. Number 2, impurities exiting from other parts of the body if it's in excess, meaning blood and vomit. Blood and vomit are impure. If they exit from the mouth or any other part of the body other than the 2 private parts, it only breaks your wudu if it's in excess. He bleeds a lot or he vomits a lot. If it's a small amount, it does not break your wudu. What if somebody has urine or stool that comes out of other parts of the body, such as in certain medical situations, where they open an area in the stomach? This breaks your wudu, whether it's small or not. 1 drop of urine, it breaks your wudu. If it's constant, it becomes like the istihala, where a person makes wudu for every prayer. So when we're talking about urine and stool coming from other parts of the body, it breaks the wudu if it's a lot or little. As for blood and vomit, coming from any part of the body other than the 2 private parts, only if it's in excess, meaning a lot. Number 3, loss of mental awareness, except for light sleep while sitting or standing. It has to be light sleep, not deep sleep. How do you know light sleep from deep sleep? You're aware of your surroundings. If you can't hear what people are talking about, and if somebody calls your name, you don't answer, or you drop something without you being aware, that's in your hand, then it's deep sleep. It breaks your wudu. Only if it's light, you're aware of your surroundings, and you're sitting or standing. Number 4, touching the penis with one's hand directly, without a barrier. Same goes for a woman in her private part. And the anal hole according to the Hanabila, but we're only sticking to what's in the text right now. Number 5, touching a woman out of desire. If it's without desire, it does not break wudu. Skin-to-skin contact without a barrier. Leaving the fold of Islam. Somebody disbelieves, we seek Allah's refuge, it nullifies their wudu. So if they accept Islam and want to pray, they have to redo their wudu. Number 7, rather they also have to make ghusl, as we will see. Number 7, eating the meat of camels. Camel meat only, not camel milk or other parts of camel body, just the meat. This is because the Prophet ﷺ was asked, shall we perform wudu after eating camel meat? He said, yes, perform wudu due to it. Then he was asked, shall we perform wudu after eating sheep's meat? He said, if you wish to perform wudu, then perform wudu. And if you wish not to, then do not perform wudu. Is reported in Sahih Muslim. Now, is a very important concept he mentions, issue of certainty and doubt. Whoever is certain of his state of purity and doubts that he's impure, or is certain of his state of impurity and doubts that he's pure, then he's in the state which he's certain of. What does this mean? You're sure you made wudu. Now you can't remember, did I break my wudu or not? Did I go past gas or not? Then we say you're considered in a state of purity. Opposite, he knows he went to the bathroom. He knows he woke up from night sleep. But he's like, did I make wudu and go to the bathroom and make wudu, or I didn't make wudu? then we say no. The default ruling is that you're certain that you did not have wudu, so you remain in that state until you become certain that you performed wudu. Is that clear? So certainty is what you're sure of. It's not removed by doubt, even if that doubt is 70% or 80%. It has to be 100%. Any questions on nullifications of wudu? Anything else that's not a nullifier of wudu is not considered a nullification. Yes, brother. Send down one second. Yes, go ahead.
Someone who's having complications with pregnancy and they're bleeding almost the whole day. And what can they do with prayer?
Somebody's bleeding all day. They try to stop the blood, of course. And that person who has a constant nullification, whether it's constant gas, constant urine, constant blood, they make wudu for every prayer, but they try to stop that blood or that urine as much as they can, whether it's through medication, bandages, or so forth. Then they make wudu for every prayer, as we will see in the chapter on menses. Sisters, any questions? Okay, brother, yes. What do you mean? What does that mean? He kisses his wife out of desire, for example. Any desire. What's that? Again? If somebody touches a woman without desire, or she touches him without desire, this does not nullify a person's wudu. If there was desire from the touching, then he should perform wudu. Yes. Yes, brother, in the end, sorry. I'll come back to it.
We have seen that from the obligations of wudu are not washing the mouth or the nostrils. But you said at the beginning...
It is from the obligations of wudu. Washing the nose and the mouth, rinsing the mouth and the nose, is from the obligations of wudu and ghusl. And we mentioned it in the slides, it's not explicit in the text. Yes, brother? Last question, inshallah.
Number two, there is from other parts of the body if it is in excess. Who's going to judge if it is excess or not?
Who tell if impurities such as vomit and blood, mainly, that's what they're speaking about, that come out of the mouth, for example, or a wound has a lot of blood. Who tell it breaks your wudu if it's in excess? It goes back to each person. If he thinks it's a lot, it breaks his wudu. If it's a little amount, according to that person, it does not break their wudu.
One more question. So in this case, if there's arousal, for example, would that nullify wudu?
Arousal by itself, does it nullify wudu? Is it mentioned in the 7 nullifiers? No, therefore it doesn't. Unless it's arousal with the preseminal fluid, as we mentioned. If you have a cut and you can use a small band-aid, you should not use a big band-aid. You should use the smallest band-aid that will do the job, and it will, if you don't need to increase. Because you can have a small cut and put a band-aid as big as your hand or as big as your arm. But something that's close, I mean, we don't have to be too particular. Something that will do the job without being past what's needed is what you should do with bandages. Next, inshallah, we'll move on to ghusl, bathing. What requires a person to do ghusl? The first is intercourse. Number 2 is exiting of semen due to desire or its equivalent for a woman. Or a wet dream if a person is sleeping. It actually has to see the wetness of the semen or its equivalent for a woman. It's not enough just to see a dream. Number 3, end of menses for a woman. and end of postpartum bleeding, number 4. And number 5, a non-Muslim accepting Islam. Now, there is a strong difference of opinion regarding this. If a person didn't take the opinion or didn't know of it, it's not a problem. But if you know somebody is accepting Islam, tell them to shower for accepting Islam. This is the safer opinion. And their prayers, if they didn't know or they didn't take the opinion, are correct. Number 6, death, meaning when a Muslim dies, he must be washed. What are the obligatory acts of ghusl? Only 2 things. The intention, which is the removal of the major hadith, or intending with it an act that requires wudu, such as I want to make ghusl so I can pray, because I finished my period, I want to pray, and so forth. And the second obligation is washing the entire body with water, including rinsing the mouth and the nose, without any specific order. Now, if somebody has the intention, jumps into an ocean or a sea and so forth, with the intention, and they rinse their mouth and nose, that's good enough. If they shower just because it's hot and they don't have the intention of removing hadith or praying, then it's not enough. We'll save the questions. Recommended acts: saying Bismillah before the beginning, rubbing water against the body with one's hands. It's recommended, not necessary. And do what is mentioned in the hadith of Maymunah, which is mentioned in your book. You can refer to it. It describes the way the Prophet ﷺ performed ghusl. But this is anything past the obligatory acts are considered recommended. No, a person does not have to undo his or her braids as long as they wash the top of the head, the apparent part of the hair, and the roots of the hair. So in ghusl, this is in ghusl of janaba, sexual impurity. But after menses and postpartum bleeding, the Hanabila say a woman must remove her braids. The majority opinion says no. Even in ghusl after menses and postpartum bleeding, a woman does not have to remove her braids, and this is the stronger opinion. She never has to remove her braids, whether she's making ghusl of janaba or of her menses. How about multiple intentions? If you intend to remove, let's say a person went to the bathroom, then they had sexual impurity, so they have both minor and major hadith. If they intend to remove both major and minor hadith, or intend to pray, this removes both of them automatically. The ghusl is enough, you don't have to do wudu. But if they intend removal of major hadith, such as janaba, sexual impurity, or menses, and they don't intend the minor hadith, such as the hadith for going to the bathroom, the author says it only removes the major, but must make wudu for the minor. The stronger opinion, the majority opinion, is that it removes both automatically. Meaning, if you intend to remove major hadith, it automatically covers minor hadith. Is that clear? So if a person is in a state of janaba and they want to remove their state of janaba, it's enough for them to shower and they don't have to make wudu automatically. Or if a woman finishes her period and so forth, it's enough for her to shower with the intention of removing major hadith, or for her intending to pray. Okay, any questions on ghusl? If you intend to pray, this covers the intention, this removes your impurity. Because what does it mean when you're performing ghusl in order to pray? What does that mean? That means you want to remove your impurity, your spiritual impurity. That's what it means. Sisters, any questions?
No.
So if one swims with the intention, for example, ghusl, but does not wipe over the area, does it count?
Now, if somebody goes swimming with the intention of ghusl, with the intention of removing his major hadith, for example, or the intention of praying, without wiping his body parts, does that count? Does that remove his hadith? What do you think? Is rubbing the body parts, all your entire body in ghusl, obligatory? No. But it's enough to wash it without rubbing. Now the only thing that's left for him is to rinse the mouth and nose, whether he does it in the beginning or the end. So if somebody swims in the sea with the intention of removing his major hadith or to pray, because he has a major hadith, then this is enough as long as they rinse their mouth and nose. Somebody he forgets to do his mouth and nose and then he dries himself. If it's close after bathing, if it's close, he can just rinse his mouth and nose. If it's an hour later, for example, it goes back to the difference of opinion. Is consecutiveness necessary in ghusl or is it not? The correct opinion is that yes, it is necessary. That meaning you can't wash half your body at night and then wake up in the morning and wash the rest of your body. You have to wash it all within a short period of time. So if he remembers an hour later he did not wash his mouth and nose, then he should repeat the whole entire ghusl. But if it's minutes later, then he can just wash his mouth and nose. Next issue, inshallah, so we can finish. Tayammum. The description of tayammum as mentioned in the book, its description is to strike both hands onto pure dirt or any surface of the earth, as we will see, one time. Then he wipes with them his face and hands. This is because the Prophet ﷺ told Ammar, it would have been sufficient for you to do like this. He then stroked the earth with his hands and wiped his hands over his face and hands. And this is mentioned in the Quran, this description. Conditions of tayammum. Inability to use water, either due to lack of water or harm due to using it. Either he'll be physically harmed by using water, or he feels if he goes to the well, there's a dangerous animal or a dangerous person that will attack him. Or he cannot find it except for a very expensive price above its norm. All of this is mentioned in your text. Or he fears if he goes to get water for his children and his wife, there's robbers, there's criminals around, and so forth. Or he fears thirst for himself. Number 2, he says the time. One cannot make tayammum for an obligatory prayer before its time, or for a recommended prayer during the time of prohibition. Meaning, before Dhuhr you cannot make tayammum until Dhuhr comes in. And once Dhuhr expires, then your tayammum is invalid. You have to repeat it again for Asr. And during the times prayer is prohibited, like after Fajr and after Asr, you cannot use it to pray a recommended prayer. You cannot use that tayammum you cannot make tayammum at that time for a recommended prayer. This is because they consider tayammum just as an emergency allowance thing, something that allows you to pray. However, the correct opinion is that it removes your hadath temporarily, meaning it removes the thing that prevents you from praying temporarily until you're able to use water. Therefore, you can make tayammum at any time, and it continues with you until you break your wudu, or you do something that requires ghusl. Okay, this is the opinion of Imam Ahmad, one of the opinions of Imam Ahmad and Abu Hanifa, rahimahumullah. However, if a person wants to be safe and make tayammum for each prayer, that's a safer opinion. Number 3, the intention. If he intends a voluntary prayer, he cannot use that to pray an obligatory prayer. However, if he intends with his tayammum an obligatory prayer, he can pray it, the obligatory prayer, as well as other obligations and voluntary prayers until the time of prayer expires. Meaning, let's say he's traveling and combining between Dhuhr and Asr. And Dhuhr time comes in, he doesn't have water, he makes tayammum for Dhuhr, and he can also pray Asr with that same tayammum, and he can read Quran and recite Quran and do sunnahs before it. For example, pray voluntary prayers until the time expires. Or if he's here in his hometown and there's no water, and it's Maghrib time and he makes tayammum for Maghrib, and he had missed a few prayers that are obligatory, he can make them up with the same tayammum, and he can pray sunnah prayers afterwards as he wishes until the time expires. This goes back to the same reason that they considered it an emergency state of tahara, which only allows you to pray, and it does not remove your hadath like wudu. However, the correct opinion is that tayammum removes your hadath temporarily. Therefore, you can intend to remove your hadath with tayammum and it will be removed, according to the correct opinion, and you don't have to worry about what you can do with it. You can do anything you want with it, like as if it was water, until you're able to use water. Number 4, using dirt that has dust. The author says you have to make tayammum on a surface of dirt that has dust. When you hit it, the dust flies. Not sand that doesn't have dust, not rocks. However, the correct opinion is that somebody can make tayammum using any part of the earth's surface, such as clay, rocks, sand, etc. That's part of the earth's surface, not grass, plants, glass, and so forth. It has to be part of the earth. Even if it's removed from the earth and put into a little tayammum kit, or it's on a wall, or anything, dust that's on a wall, a wall that's made out of rocks, or the rock is brought to the person, it's valid. If a person brings dust or rocks into his bed and he's in the hospital, it's valid to make tayammum on it. If a person is unable to, he's in prison, for example, or he's captured somewhere, he has no surface of the earth, he has no water, we said he prays as he is without tayammum, without wudu. Let me just make sure we finish tayammum. Nullifications, anything that nullifies tayammum, nullifies wudu, or requires ghusl will break a person's tayammum. Number 2, expiration of the prayer time, according to the author. Meaning if you made tayammum for dhuhr, once dhuhr is over, the time is over, you have to, your tayammum is invalid, you have to redo it for asr, we already mentioned this. However, the correct opinion that this does not nullify the tayammum. The expiration of the prayer time does not nullify your tayammum, you can still use it to pray asr. And the third thing, he says, the ability to use water even if one is praying. So if somebody's praying and he made tayammum, and while he's praying somebody comes to him, we found water, we bought water, then he has to break his prayer. His tayammum is invalid, he breaks his prayer and he does wudu or ghusl and he prays. And tayammum is valid for major hadith, to remove major hadith, and to remove minor hadith. But once water is available and he's able to use it, he can no longer, his tayammum is invalid. Whether he finds water or he's able to use it after being sick and so forth. Okay, now any questions regarding tayammum?
Yes, I have one.
Yes.
Let's say a patient has a rash from head to toe and they can't use any water, it will make it worse. However, they could use water to rinse their mouth and nose. Would you do both?
Very good question. The scholars speak about this, usually giving the example of burns, where they cannot let water touch their skin if in the area that's burned. Or if there's a severe skin rash where water will make it worse. If they cannot wash it, we say wipe it with a wet hand. If it's harmful to wipe it with a wet hand, then you leave it. You wash what you're able to, and you leave everything else that's harmful. Okay, so number 1, we say wash. If it's harmful, we say wipe with a wet hand. If it's harmful, we say what? Leave it. But you perform tayammum for leaving washing that body part. For example, somebody has a burn on his foot or a rash on his foot that cannot touch water. He makes wudu, washes his mouth and arms and wipes his head, washes the foot that's good. And the foot that's not good, he performs tayammum by striking the earth one time, wiping his face and hands. If it's the rash is on his entire body, the burns is on his entire body, he's able to rinse his mouth and nose, let him rinse his mouth and nose. And if he's able to make tayammum by wiping his hands on the earth and striking his hands on the earth and wiping his hands and nose, his face and hands, then for the rest of his body, then this is what he must do. Is that clear?
Yes, thank you.
So whenever you're able to use water on parts of your body and you cannot, you make tayammum for the parts that you cannot use. If you cannot wash it or wipe it. So, but the first step is to wash it. If you cannot wash, then you wipe with a wet hand. If you cannot wipe with a wet hand, you leave it, but you perform tayammum on its behalf.
So when you say wash the parts you can perform tayammum.
One minute, sister. I'll come back to your question, inshallah. Yes, brother?
So you said wash the parts you can, perform tayammum for the parts you can, right?
Yeah.
So for example, say like you have an injury on your leg, but the tayammum is just the hands and the face. What do you do with the leg? You can't wash the leg?
No, the leg, a person has injured his leg. He cannot wash it. Is he able to wipe it with a wet hand? If he's able to, we say wipe your leg in ghusl with a wet hand. If he's unable to, it's a burn. or a rash that he cannot have any water touch it, we say wash your entire body except for your leg. Keep it away from the water. And after you finish ghusl, you make tayammum. You wipe your hand, you strike your hands on the earth and wipe your face and your hands. You're not touching your leg at all. It's something spiritual. It's not a physical cleansing. Yes, sister, what your question? I'll come back to you.
My question is that if art is not available, that's not available, so can we keep some stone and can make with that tayammum?
Yes, you can make tayammum on stones and rocks because they are part of the earth. Anything that is from the surface of the earth, whether it's on earth or you remove it and put it in front of you on your table. Whether dust is available or not, but it's preferred to use dust, and if not, then to use something else. But any surface is valid in all cases. Surface of the earth.
Okay, one more thing. In Haram is crowded and the carpet is dusty and we can make tayammum on the carpet.
Here's a very good question. The haram is crowded. Can you make tayammum? First of all, before the carpet, let's assume it was even the dust, pure dust. Can you make tayammum? Bathrooms are very crowded. What should you do? Yes, brother. There are a lot of outlets to make wudu. You can take a bottle of water, whether it's free or for a riyal or zamzam even, and go make tayammum in any place, even for women where you don't have to expose yourself in front of men. You take a bottle of water and in Hajj, same thing. Crowded bathrooms is not enough for you to make tayammum. There has to be no water. More water is harmful for you. If you're able to get a bottle of water like this, 1 liter bottle, and make tayammum, make wudu anywhere, then you have to. But let's assume you had no water and all you have is a carpet full of dust. You can make tayammum on that carpet full of dust if there was no water. But in the case of a crowded bathrooms, no. Any other questions for tayammum?
Here is hands and arms as well.
What's that?
Do the hands include the arms?
When you do tayammum, you strike with your palms the earth and then you wipe your face and you wipe your hands up to your wrists only, according to the stronger opinion. You do not wipe until your elbows.
What if someone has an impurity on his body?
So we can make the tayammum with the carpet?
You can make tayammum on a carpet full of dust only if water is unavailable. But in your situation where you said the haram bathrooms are crowded, that's not valid. You cannot make tayammum. What you have to do in that case is take a bottle of water, and whether it's zamzam or any water, and make wudu with it anywhere.
Is one about to make tayammum if the time for prayer is about to go out and you don't have enough time to go and get water before the time of the prayer goes out?
The Hanabila mentioned this in the beginning of the book of prayer. If you wake up, for example, 5 minutes before the prayer is over, and if you were told that if you go get water and make wudu, the prayer time will expire, should you make tayammum or not? The Hanabila say, if you're able to get water soon, it's not going to take you an hour, it's going to be soon, then you go get water and perform wudu or ghusl, even if the time expires. But if it's going to take a long time, then no, make tayammum and pray on time. Okay, inshallah, we'll stop here with the questions of tayammum. We have a workshop today from 1 to 3. Attendance is mandatory. We'll finish up quickly the remaining issues on menses and so forth, and then we'll move on to the workshop activity. جزاكم الله خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله. It's from 1 to 3. Again, the timing is from 1 to 3 p.m.